The story begins with the fact that the girl was called a defective saint. And since she does not heal people now, she asks to be called not a saint, but a villain. The girl promised that she would return all their pain, which she had previously taken away, because she would never forgive everyone. The saint was asked for help to heal a boy who was attacked by a magical beast. Saint healers help sick and crippled people in the temple. This is a sacred place, and the rest of the girls are candidates for the holiday. Their main mission is to heal the sick. Rua, unfortunately, could not heal others without feeling all the pain on herself, so she constantly suffered from it. Candidates nicknamed her an imperfect saint because she has one peculiarity. The girl takes away the man's mutilations, after which she heals herself. For her, this is the only way to heal, but at the same time, in this way, she repays the debt to the temple for the fact that they gave her shelter after the death of her parents. It's the best Rua can do, no matter how much pain and suffering she goes through. In addition, the girl has another unnecessary feature that she needs to hide. Ariana's friend assured Rua not to pay attention to what was being said about her. After all, he always diligently fulfills all his duties and never makes a mistake. Rua thanked her friend for her support, because she is sure she would not have been able to cope without her. When Rua first met Mr. Galt, she was just beginning the service. And when he asked to heal him, the girl was not able to do it at first. Rua despaired that she would not be able to cope with this in the future. However, Gal assured her that everyone fails and asked if Rua would like to be his saint. He will also strive for the future of their country and ask the girl not to despair. Since then, Rua has kept these words in her heart. Galt tried very hard and rose to become the commander of the knights, and that's why a girl should also try. Ariana thinks that her friend would be great to watch with Galt together. Nowhere is it written that saints cannot fall in love. Ariana assured that she blesses Rua because she wishes only the best for her. Instead, Rua asked her to promise that if Ariana fell in love, she would tell her. Once Galt was attacked by a magical beast and was in a critical condition. Even for holy healers, such wounds are beyond strength. Rua was called to heal the commander if she wasn't in pain. The girl wants to save Galt. She took all his wounds, and now she does not have time to heal. It seemed that she was about to die, and a moment before that she was visited by memories. But Rua didn't die, and neither did Galt. After waking up, she wanted to see Ariana and talk. A month later, Rua came to her senses and learned that all this time they thought that she had quit her job and was lazy. But the worst thing is that no one even visited her. Rua realized that she had better not wake up. Everyone said that it was Ariana who cured Mr. Galt at the risk of his life. The maid remarked that, unlike Rua, Ariana was a real saint. She added that Ariana and Galt looked great together, and even these days the wedding was decided. Rua was shocked to hear this news. Candidates discussed the upcoming wedding at the party. They admired Galt, that at a young age he had already become a commander, and thanks to him, the conflict with the neighboring state was quickly resolved. Everyone believed that it was Ariana who healed the commander, as a saint should, and Rua is her complete opposite. There were rumors that she ran away from the church to have fun with some guy, and that's when she got injured. They did not understand why the high priest accepted such a girl into the temple. After all, Ariana performs her duties. And most importantly, Ariana herself spread all these rumors. When Rua finally met her pseudo-friend, she was shocked that she didn't even want to talk to her. Ariana set Galt up against Rua, so that when she ran up to the pair, the man pushed her away. No one believed that Rua actually healed Galt. She couldn't understand what she was using her healing gift for. Ariana wanted to see Rua's disappointed face for a long time. For her, the girl was just a toy. Rua's whole world collapsed after the betrayal of her best friend. She was sitting on the grass and crying as, meanwhile, the men started mocking her. They made fun of her hair and yelled at her to get off the trail. After one of the men grabbed Rua by the hair, the girl couldn't stand it and grabbed his arm in return. After that, the attacker felt a piercing pain, a power that is the complete opposite of a healer's power Rua has always hidden. The girl promised that she would never heal anyone again. There is a legend according to which several hundred years ago there was a plague in the kingdom of Zeto. One girl with the gift of a healer saved the people. A temple was built to worship the goddess Rush, an independent institution in whose affairs the royal family could not interfere. The girls, who have the same power as Rush, serve as saints to heal people. It is believed that the ability to heal appears in girls before the age of 10, and they are usually born into aristocratic families. Outstanding female candidates are officially elevated to the rank of saints. This title is on a par with royalty. Currently, the church has several candidates for sainthood, but the place of the saint herself has been empty for 10 years, because they haven't found a worthy candidate yet. Until Rua became an orphan, she lived in a baron's family and dreamed of becoming a saint. Several days passed, and her natural color did not return. She was in for a massive shock when she reached the limit of her abilities. Now she doesn't know what to do. Other candidates tried to humiliate Rua, calling her flawed. However, the girl ignored them. Ariana interceded for her earlier. But now Rua realized that her former friend was no different from them. Ariana made Rue believe in their friendship in order to taunt her. The girl used to be so afraid of these candidates. They indignantly declared that Rua has no right to be in the rosary, because it is for real candidates in the feast. The girl grabbed her abuser's hand to force her to shut up with the help of pain. She has always healed people, but she can also bring back pain she took on in the past. A long time ago, Rua used this power against her mother and thought she would never use this ability again. The burn that the girl handed over to the candidate once belonged to her. Once, when former friends were healing patients, Ariana asked Rue to take her patients. Ariana only healed 2. And although Rua's strength was at the limit, she agreed, because they are friends and Ariana always stood up for her. Back then, Rua was too blind and naive to notice that she was being taken advantage of. The girl realized that she had a great opportunity to hurt her abusers. When she was returning to her room, she met the second prince, Sven. The prince had a reputation as a capable and perceptive young man. He wanted to talk to the girl about the dark side of the temple. Sven noted that Rua had great abilities and wanted them to become allies. Rua's first time in the garden of the royal castle. Sven told everyone to leave him so that no one would disturb them. He asked the girl about the transition to the dark side of the temple. Due to the encounter with magical beasts, the state has suffered losses since last year. Sven remarked that it looked strange. Initially, these animals were in the territory of foreign forests and wastelands. They met only occasionally in their places of residence. Suddenly, they began to appear inside the state and attack citizens. Rua assumed that someone was controlling the magical beasts and pointing them at the people. Sven believes that this someone is the head of the temple of the entire clergy. Rua was shocked by the prince's statement. After all, it was the head of the temple who was the first to learn that Rua had lost her parents and about her strength, and invited him to his place. Sven thinks that the goal of the chairman is to gain the unquestioning loyalty of the citizens. The more wounds, the more work the candidates have. In this case, the faith of the people is concentrated in the holy place. It can be equated in importance with the royal palace. The head of the clergy increases the authority of the church and will be able to rule the entire country. Sven is sure that the head is not the only one involved, and he is helped by 3 aristocratic families who donate large amounts of money to the temple. It leads them under Count Tobias. Rua realized that Ariana was also involved in this. Sven added that the head of the clergy made a pact with Yuan of the northern people, because he has the power to control magical creatures. The prince wants Rua to help him expose the head of the clergy and everyone involved. The girl has all the possibilities for this, and above all, the power to inflict pain. Now Rua will be able to repay Miss Torbiaz. The girl asks to give her time to think, but Sven hopes for a positive answer. If everything the prince said was true, Rua couldn't ignore it. She is no longer the naive girl she was recently. Rua noticed Arya and Galt cooing, and it hurt her. The former best friend convinced the man Rua fell in love with that she was the one who healed him. The commander unquestioningly believed and was grateful enough to promise to repay Ari. Rua also met the head of the clergy, Frix Ronhatz. He was glad to see that the girl was already on the mend, but not happy that she was walking outside the church grounds. The chairman told Rua to go about his duties. The girl always worked in the sweat of her brow, even when the rest were enjoying their days off, although it was Frix Ronhatz's order. He noted that Rua has not yet matured to the level of the other candidates, and therefore she must give her all. Rua went into the royal library to find something about what Sven had said and about Yuan's lineage. As it turned out, they are ethnic minorities living deep in the forest and speaking a unique language. Their main difference is the ability to control magical creatures and a tag on their neck with the image of scales. Prince Sven suddenly entered the library. He was glad that the girl decided to find confirmation of his words. The prince introduced the girl to his assistant, who can be trusted, Shiji Rubin. A man from the common people from the west of the country. He was invited to the service due to his abilities. Shiji has no direct ties to the Yuan family, but he was able to learn a lot from conversations with merchants. Sven is sure that Shiji will help Rua in his study of the subject. In parting, the prince decided to share his guess that if the head of the clergy made the next move, it would be when everyone was asleep. Sven wondered if Rua was really the one he was looking for. Later, the girl decided to check Sven's words, so she slipped out of her room at night. However, there was nothing remotely suspicious in the temple. But if Rua is spotted, rumors will spread again that she is running away to spend the night with her husband. She approached the prayer tower and noticed two strangers. One of them was an assistant to the head of the clergy, the other seemed to be of the Yuan family. Rua witnessed them making the deal. The girl decided to distract the guards and slip closer. Rua approached the guard, introducing herself as the new maid, and asked to be shown the way. As a sign of gratitude, she took his hand and applied the power of pain. The girl gave the guard a migraine, causing him to even lose consciousness. Rua heard the assistant head of the clergy talking to Yuan. He was delighted that the attack on the village of Mireni was a success. Now the girl was convinced that the high priest was involved in attacks on people. But what shocked her the most was the fact that Ari was standing next to the men. She is with them for the sake of the place of the saint and to marry Galt. Ariana was confused by the fact that Galt was constantly upset because he could not let go of his unhappy love. However, she is determined to make him fall in love with her, or make him suffer. Ariana had always considered Rua a flawed saint, and the girl had unquestioning faith in their friendship. However, even for the head of the clergy, she was only a puppet. Ariana is convinced that as soon as she becomes a saint, the other candidates will be her dolls. As soon as the company began to discuss their main goal, they heard a suspicious sound. Rua was afraid that she would be caught, but Shiji rushed to her aid. He released several rats to divert attention. The man looked after Rua and the head of the clergy on the prince's orders. Sven was glad that Rua had taken the initiative, but he didn't think it was enough to secretly watch the clergy in the tower. To find irrefutable evidence of their guilt, he needs Rua and her powers. Rua agreed to unite with His Highness. She seeks to repay all her offenders. As parting, Sven gave her the key to the royal greenhouse, where all their meetings would take place in the future. When Sven was still a child, he made the greenhouse his secret hideaway. And he showed her to Rua as they became allies. The prince offered to maintain friendly relations from now on. Sven handed Roy a portrait of Viscount Rose Redmond. In the aristocratic world, he is recognized as a heartthrob. He had an unlimited number of amorous connections. Redmond is a skilled orator and diplomat, but his foolish fame overshadows these achievements. He is the third representative united with the head of the clergy. He uses his domestic policy skills to exchange unique goods with a Western country. However, he needs to do this secretly outside of the official agreement. All those goods go to the Yuan family as payment for their help in controlling the magical creatures. Also, these animals are put to sleep and hidden at the bottom of boxes with goods in order to transport them to the right places. And this is exactly what Roz Redmond is doing. Sven is convinced that if they can find official documents to prove this, they will be able to solve this crime in public. The first step will be a ball in honor of the Viscount, where Sven is also invited as a representative of the royal family. The prince invited Rua to go to the ball together. The girl accepted the offer if it would help their plan. At this time, Ariana also invited to keep her company at the Galta ball. The commander was not too happy, but had to accept the invitation. The couple was disturbed by two men, one of whom was injured. Galt asked Ariana to heal the patient, because this is not such a serious advice as he had. The candidate was embarrassed because Rua had always helped her before. Accordingly, she has not healed anyone for a long time. In order not to fall in the eyes of Galt, she refused, noting that she was too tired at the service. Galt wondered why Ari thought his subordinate's wound was unimportant. But at the same time, he understands that the girl is thinking about the ball. The head of the clergy interrupted the couple's further conversation by calling Ari to him. The ball was 5 days away, but Rua didn't have an outfit. All of her belongings were damaged by the candidate's abuse, and she gave the rest to Ariana at her request. Once Ariana took a red ribbon from her friend's hair. After all, she is too bright for Rua, which would cause more bullying from her. But since that time, the girl has not seen that tape. Candidates for the feast can receive payment by leaving an application, which must be approved by the head of the clergy. But no matter how many applications Rua left, none of them were approved. The maid brought Rua a package, annoyed that she had to serve her. She couldn't hold back and blurted out that the girl had decided to seduce Shiji as well. Rua was outraged by such an attitude that she thought of teaching the woman a lesson. However, the candidate must use her power wisely. She told the maid to apologize because her words offended Mr. Shiji, and therefore Prince Sven himself. Rua understood that the maid was trying to humiliate her, but she chose a bad tactic. She reminded the woman who was who, and that it was Rua who was a candidate for the feast, and not a simple servant. The woman begged in fear. Opening the suitcase, Rua found an outfit for the ball. Sven ordered a famous tailor to make a dress for the girl. The prince did not tell about it earlier, because he wanted to surprise his ally. The prince knew that Rua worked without days off, so he obtained an official leave for her, which the director of the temple simply cannot ignore. Rua was impressed that Sven could deal with anything. The girl has the only memory of her mother, one earring. Once, the first time Rua healed someone outside of her family, she dropped one of the jewels. When she returned home, she found the whole family dead. Since then, this one earring has always been with her and reminds her of her family. However, now she is no longer powerless. She will do anything to make their plan a reality. Sven was the first to go to the ball, but he prepared a special carriage for Rua as well. He assigned Shiji to protect the girl. Rua wasn't too comfortable with the assistant because he wasn't as talkative as Sven. Rua noticed that the moon was hiding behind the clouds, and she had a bad feeling. Approaching, Sven immediately complimented her. Rua was embarrassed to stand with the prince, given his perfect appearance. The girl remarked that she should not be flattered. All her life she was blonde, but one day her hair turned white. Sven noted that this again emphasized her strength, after all the pain she had been through. The prince added that she should be proud of her hair, and he joked that they matched his shade, that they could even be considered a couple. But no matter how you think about it, Shiji is also suitable for Rua. Rua replied that the prince would not lead his assistant into a dead end. Sven was glad that the girl laughed for the first time with him. He held out his hand to Rua and offered to go to the ball. Sven immediately drew the girl's attention to the Viscount. Redmond seems frivolous, but he is very perceptive. Although the rumors are true, he does have a weakness for women. Rua understood that there were many people close in status to Sven at the ball, so he couldn't move around so easily, and she decided that she should act independently, and to begin with, she should explore the hall. The girl wanted to know what the maid was so worried about. But before she did that, Ariana's former best friend happened to be at the meeting, accompanied by the Knight Commander Galt. Ariana was surprised to see her former friend at the ball. Rua was annoyed that Ariana was trying to be nice to her despite the fact that she had betrayed her. A former friend laughed at the fact that Rua was at the ball without a partner. However, Rua replied that she was here because she had connections, and of course she did not come alone. Then the girl decided to pick on her friend by pointing out that she looks like an old woman with her hair. Rua said that she likes the current color even more than before. Galt intervened, saying that Ariana should not behave according to propriety. However, Ariana wanted to make sure that Rua had indeed come with a partner. She tried in every way to humiliate her ex-girlfriend. But Sven came to the rescue in time. Galt was amazed by the appearance of the prince and immediately apologized for not saying hello. Ari introduced herself to Sven and asked if Rua really came with him, and what can a prince have in common with an orphan. Sven noted that he asked the candidate to help him with a program to help the underprivileged. And that's why he invited Rua to the ball as a thank you. This conversation attracted the attention of those around, but did not arouse suspicion. Sven has prepared a false excuse ahead of time so that they can find each other. Everyone was delighted that His Highness was helping orphans, and the charity had a positive effect on public opinion. Invoking sympathy was a good decision. With a strained smile, Ariana noted that she also wanted to get to know the prince better. The girl heard her favorite melody and invited Galt to dance. But before the man left, he was stopped by Sven. The prince remarked that the commander had excellent skill, but his taste in women was terrible. Hearing this, Ariana became familiar. She is determined not to let this happen again. Sven really wanted to dance with Rua, but she replied that if she heard a familiar tune, she would gladly agree. The girl noticed a knife in one of the maids. The prince assumed that the maid had come for a specific person and that it could be Redmond. Sven approached the waitress, taking the knife. He asked her not to make a fuss. His Highness inquired what prompted the girl to attack the Viscount. She introduced herself as Charlotte. She came to earn money and got into Redmond's house. Charlotte knew he was a womanizer, but she needed money. For 2 years, she worked in the house and nothing happened. However, when the girl planned to get married and decided to leave, everything changed. Her groom was to be an old friend named Alan. He also left the village and opened a bakery on the outskirts of the kingdom. It turned out that the prince visited this bakery more than once. He liked the cream buns. When Sven was a child, he hid his identity and secretly fled to the city. Although he is no longer involved in this, at that time he was interested in learning about the life of the people. Charlotte and Alan dreamed of getting married and running a bakery. When she told Redmond of her plans, he immediately showered her in his room. And at that moment, he threw her on the bed. Charlotte was disgusted. She resisted as hard as she could, but Redmond slapped her in the face and forced her. The Viscount decided to have fun at last. The girl immediately told Alan about everything, and the bruises on her face and body only confirmed the words. The man got angry and went to demand an admission of guilt from the Viscount. He couldn't close his eyes despite the fact that it might negatively affect the bakery. Instead, it only amused Redmond. The Viscount closed Alan's bakery. These words made Rua angry. She cannot forgive the head of the clergy for being on the side of a man like Redmond. Since Charlotte had worked in the Viscount's house for a long time, it was not difficult to break into the house. She didn't care about the price. She was trying to kill Redmond. She was even ready for the death penalty. Charlotte believed that if she was gone, Alan would be able to get back his business and his beloved bakery. Rua reassured the girl, noting that they have the same goal and they will take care of her as well. Sven noted that if Charlotte's words were true, then he would also use his best efforts. Rua expected him to say that. The candidate is sure that all of Redmond's sins will return to him 100-fold. Sven noted that Rua was very sensitive, even risking making changes to their plan for Charlotte's sake. Rua indicated that they would get closer to Redmond so that there would be a chance to get those documents. And in her free time, the girl will try to figure out what can be done in the situation with Charlotte. Sven worried that Rua's kindness might get in the way of their revenge plan. Rua heard the familiar tune of Falsetto for the Saints. After that, Sven pulled her by the hand to dance because she promised. The entourage was delighted to see the prince in the company of a girl from the family of Baron Restato. They also thought that Ariana and the knight commander were not as refined. Hearing this, Ariana was annoyed but pointed out to Galt that some miserable bugs were trampling underfoot. Sven noticed that Rua's face had changed. He asked her to at least smile. However, the girl replied that she could not, because she had not danced for a long time. The prince noticed the earring and realized that it actually belonged to Rua. On one of the days when Sven ran away to the city, he interceded for a woman who was attached to a stranger. Due to the young age of the prince, the man was able to fight back and avoid punishment. Sven was worried that if he didn't return home soon, everyone would start to worry. He was an unwanted second son, because the second birth was more difficult than the first, and his mother lost a lot of blood. The courtesan could not save the queen, and she died, leaving Sven in a situation where everyone felt disgusted with the unwanted prince. And the older brother reminded that Sven's red eyes are the blood that he sucked from his mother. Due to the failure of the younger son, no one questioned the fact that the throne would go to the eldest. But Sven was not interested in the authorities. No one would want to be neglected because he is an unwanted child. Such an attitude is disgusting for Sven. And he decided a long time ago to prove to his brother his strength and how wrong he is. The prince began to go out into the city, but the thoughts that he had no one did not disappear. Just as little Sven was going over everything in his head and berating himself for the wounds he had received, he saw Rua. The girl noticed that he was hurt and decided to help him. Sven immediately understood that the stranger was one of the candidates in the party, but refused to help. Little Rua disobeyed and healed the boy because she cared about him. When the girl was called by her mother, she ran before she could introduce herself, but wished the stranger to protect her. Sven was touched by this. He had never been treated so kindly by anyone before. The boy picked up the lost earring of a stranger and promised himself that he would meet her again. Now no one would dare to call him an unwanted child. He gained strength for this. Sven had no clue until he learned about the temple's dark side. He offered Rua to be his ally, but constantly doubted if she was the one. And during communication, he hoped that she was his savior and goddess. At that time, Rua took his wounds and still keeps the same kindness in her heart. But if that kindness gets in the way of their revenge, he will be the one to get his hands dirty in her place. After all, while he was looking for Rua, she received many wounds. and this time Sven seeks to become her support, sword, and shield. He wants Rua to be by his side always. Redmond was delighted with the dance between His Highness and the stranger. He asked to introduce the girl. The man stroked Rua's chin and showed a great desire to get to know her. Sven did not like this gesture and asked the Viscount to lower his hand. The prince was already trying to take his ally away, as she declared that she would figure it out herself. Rua introduced herself and stated that she had come as His Highness's companion, but was afraid that she was not suitable for him. She would prefer the Viscount. Rua tried to convince Redmond that she fell in love with him. The man believed and invited her to his room after the next melody. At that time, Sven was not himself. He tried to stand in the way of the Viscount's touches of the girl's hand. The prince wondered where Rua got such courting skills. She replied that she was just following the girls around Redmond. Sven noted that being alone with the Viscount was not part of their plans. Rua added that it would work in their favor the other way around. You're bigger, that her strength would work better on a naked body. Although Rua was not someone to be protected, it was clear that the prince did not like the idea of her. Sven asked Rua to be on guard and to call him in case of anything. He noted that the girl does not look like a saint. She is more of a villain. Rua went into the Viscount's room and noticed that he had been waiting for her for a long time. Redmond offered the lady a drink, but she refused. After that, he threw her on the bed. The man decided to inquire why Rua was here, what her real purpose was. Meanwhile, Siji looked around the estate. Suddenly, the assistant noticed Mrs. Torbiaz and a robed man next to her. He realized that he smelled danger, and therefore it was necessary to urgently report everything to His Highness and Rua. The Viscount tried to find out what Roas was up to. The girl was frightened that they had been declassified, but Redmond was interested in whether she was here, not because of status or money. Rua was led to a dead end. She could not even use force because she needed to touch a bare part of her body. Without thinking long, Rua answered that she needed an emotional lift. She added that due to the fact that she lives in a cramped temple, the girl does not feel a sufficient lift. But with the Viscount, she can enjoy herself without any restrictions. Redmond laughed, saying that he liked such naughty girls. Instead, Charlotte was loyal to her husband and resisted, and she shut up only after 5 strokes. Although Charlotte's body was not bad, but later her fiancé came. Rua realized that Redmond is a terrible person, and she wants to tell him. She also remarked that she was not like Charlotte. The Viscount hoped that they would have a very good time together. The girl confirmed and then leaned closer to the Viscount and asked death or life. After that, Redmond became covered with red spots and began to itch. Roas tried to frighten the Viscount by putting poison in his wine. However, the girl did not have the opportunity to fill her. He is only experiencing itching now, but the symptoms will worsen over time. And since Rua won't give him the antidote, Redmond will die in a few minutes. The Viscount could not guess that it was all a bluff, so he prayed for an antidote. Rua stated that she would only cure Redmond if he provided documentation of the goods he was trading with the West. Rua decided to make the situation worse, saying that there was nothing she could do otherwise. Then the Viscount admitted that the necessary papers were in his office. The girl said that she could not give the antidote until Redmond signed the papers. Taking the sheet, the Viscount noticed that the conditions indicated there were extremely absurd. Roas billed for the damages of Charlotte, the girl who had been disgraced by the Viscount. Sven put it together as he went and spared no zeros. Rua added that the bakery is also subject to damages. The girl conducted an investigation and found out that there were many victims like her. Some of them became pregnant and were thrown out into the street. Rua wanted the Viscount to allocate alimony for the upbringing of these children as well. Between wealth and life, Redmond chose to live and signed the document. Rua disappointed the man, saying that there was no antidote and that Windows would slowly die, regretting what it had done. The man begged Rua not to leave him to die. The girl noticed that the Viscount was so afraid of itching all over his body that in the end he lost consciousness. Sven praised Rua for doing her part of the plan right. He noticed that the girl's dress was ruined and covered her body with a cape. The prince wanted to repay the Viscount for what he had done to Roas. But the girl reassured His Highness that she had already dealt with him. Sven wanted Rua to take care of herself more. After that, the couple went into Redmond's office and found the necessary document there. Suddenly they were disturbed by Shiji. He reported that he saw Miss Torbiaz with a stranger near the warehouse. The aide assumed that it was a man from the Yuan clan, and magical creatures are delivered to Redmond's warehouse. Soon everyone was covered by a terrible hum. Running out to the banquet, they saw a magical beast among the people. Rua understood. It was all Ariana's handiwork. The girl was convinced of this when she saw a smiling former friend who was looking at the situation from the balcony. Ariana watched the beast with fascination. Attacking the aristocrats was originally the plan of the head of the clergy. After all, this is how they can win the faith of these people. Even if aristocrats have sworn allegiance, too much authority can arouse suspicion. Therefore, it was necessary to choose an estate in advance. Redmond has such a crowd today that it would be a sin not to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. Ari told the representative of the Yuan family that he and the beast should try not to kill everyone, because the girl would have to heal many. She wanted the creature to be open to one person, and that was Rua. Ariana saw in her a pitiful person. If Rua had remained her toy, she would have allowed her to live on. Galt tried to keep things under control and reduce people's panic. If the man had a sword, he would fight the beast. But Ari convinced him that the weapon was not suitable for the event. He wanted to find his bride and hoped that she was all right. Rua knew that it was all Ariani's hands and that she would do it without an iota of doubt. Shiji brought His Highness a sword because he expected something like this to happen. Sven was determined to fight for the beast. The prince ordered the aide to find a man from the Yuan family and arrest him, because he must be somewhere nearby. Rua did not want to stand aside and help, but Sven convinced her that she could only get in the way and get hurt. Rua understood that Ariana could have given the order to attack her. She assumed she wouldn't be able to use the powers on Ariana, but the girl wanted to at least try. She told Sven she had other plans. Sven was sure that if Shiji took on a person from the Yuan family, then Rua would prevent danger. Although he was skilled in fighting, he did not feel that he could defeat the beast on his own. The prince wanted to take the beast as far away from people as possible. He shared his plan with Rua. One girl did not want to run away. She would have been in her right mind and no one would have had to take revenge. Sven noted that Rua always exceeds expectations. He added that he agreed to follow her plan. Galt noticed that during the entire time of the evacuation, Ari did not appear like this. He hoped that she had already managed to escape. The beast planned to attack the white-haired girl, but mistakenly confused her. Rua, wanting to protect an innocent woman, boldly stepped forward and drew his attention to her. The candidate understood that Ari would order to attack the girl with white hair, but the creature could not recognize people. She didn't know if her power would work on the beast, but after trying, she succeeded in giving him a hangover. After which the large creature fell unconscious on the floor. All the credit for overcoming the beast was attributed to Sven. The entourage began to admire the courage of the prince and the girl who helped him. Galt studied Rua and realized that she reminded him of Mrs. Ristado. Ari was defeated, but she had a plan B up her sleeve. The representative of the Yuan family was amazed that the beast did not move. He tried to escape unnoticed, but Shiji rushed up in time and put a sword to his throat. The commander ordered, on the orders of His Highness, the attacker to confess what he had done. During the animal's attack on the ball, there were no serious consequences. Only a few people received light bruises, so the matter was not publicized. The Yuan man was caught, and the Viscount himself was arrested on the spot. If the fact of the existence of the conspiracy leader is revealed, the crimes of the head of the clergy and his accomplices will not be able to remain silent for a long time either. The bandits attacked the carriage in which the prisoners were being transported. A man from the Yuan clan was killed. Although the Viscount managed to escape, he lost consciousness. Now he is in prison and is no different from a crazy invalid who cannot utter a word. Rue's threats did not become the same turning point, but this time, Redmond really believed he was going to be killed and went crazy. The girl assumed that the head of the clergy hired robbers. Sven believes that Miss Tobias has thought things through ahead of time and prepared the assassins as insurance in case they fail. Shiji thinks that he would rather accompany the carriage than the knights, so he apologizes for it. His Highness objected, saying that they should keep as far away from the matter as possible, even if all the laurels went to the knights. There is another person from the Yuan clan. There is a good chance that a new character will appear at some gathering. Excluding Shiji from the mission was Sven's decision, so the prince asked the assistant not to worry because he did everything right. Shiji accepted this fact and pointed out that His Highness should not have said this. Sven was glad that the effects of the magical beast's attack should eventually wear off, as they had thwarted the enemy's plans. Charlotte received the money before Redmond's property was seized, as planned. Rua was glad that Redmond's wife and son did not take part in his affairs, and therefore were not affected by his arrest in any way. The girl asked what their next plan was, whether they would deal with another aristocrat, an ally of the high priest. The prince indicated that he must first bring Rui to an audience with his father. The girl was quite frightened that she would have to meet the king himself. At this time, Ariana was very panicked. Due to the failure with the attack of magical creatures, the head of the clergy reprimanded her. Although the assassins who attacked the carriage did a good job, the head of the clergy still ordered Ariana to sit quietly and not show herself for a certain time. The girl did not expect that everything would not go according to her plan. Rua did so bravely and voluntarily became bait for the beast. Ari was annoyed by the fact that her ex-girlfriend was carried around like a sack and applauded. Because of this, Ariana became very hysterical and shouted that she hated Rua. She wanted Galt to pamper her. She noticed that the man was talking to her strangely after the ball, and she was even more angry because of that. The maid came to give Ari a message from the head of the clergy. It was about the annual celebration that will take place in the near future. Candidates are collected on it during the holiday. Ari assumed that she had a chance to rehabilitate and receive the forgiveness of the head of the clergy. At this time, the first prince was reading a report on the incident at Redmond Manor. The document noted that the second prince, Sven, played a key role. Sigrid was not amused by such news. Mrs. Diana came to his office and noticed how the prince was frowning. The lady pointed out that with such a face, he would frighten all his subordinates, and that it would be better for him to take an example from his younger brother, at which Sigrid got angry. The first prince thought that his bride was hinting that Sven was more suited to the role of ruler. Diana reassured her husband that she didn't mean it, and asked him not to be so sad. The lady reminded the bridegroom that the candidate, who together with his brothers helped deal with the incident, would visit tomorrow. Sigrid said he was looking forward to the event. Diana turned to Louis as if he should wait longer to meet the candidate. The man agreed because this is an important person for him. The head of the clergy was beside himself with anger because Ariana's frivolity almost destroyed all their plans. The assistant stood up for the girl, saying that the girl had already dealt with this problem. Ari hired assassins for money, and at the upcoming annual ceremony, she will behave obediently and carry out all the orders of the chairman. Frix Ronhatz mentioned that he should nominate Ari first. The head of the clergy could not imagine that Prince Sven and Rua would calm down the magical beast. He assumed that His Highness knew about his plans, but the girl ended up there by accident. But no matter what, Redmond is no longer needed. Frix Ronhatz has decided not to recruit any more magical beasts. The man realized that he had to sacrifice some details of the plan in order to complete it faster. Galt caught the high priest by surprise. He came to ask a few questions about one of the candidates. Frix Ronhatz said that if it is not an urgent matter, then they will talk later, and quickly ran out of the office. The commander wanted to know more about Rua Resteto. He doubted if the girl was really as bad as Ariana was made out to be. After all, she acted very bravely and dignified at the ball. Rua was very nervous before meeting the king. Although Sven had said that His Highness wanted to reward the girl for helping with the incident at Redmond Manor. Sven again gave Rua a dress for the event, but the girl felt discomfort from endless looks in her direction. The feat of the candidate and His Highness became the subject of discussions at many events. Rua wondered what the other candidates thought about such a sudden interest in her persona. Some even believed that Rua would be the Rose Princess this year at the ceremony in honor of the goddess Rush. This holiday has even become national. The main face in the West should be the current holiday. Since her place is vacant, 2 candidates are chosen for this role from the side of the temple and from the side of the royal family. 2 girls who perfectly cope with their duties before the people are called Princesses of Roses. This title was named so because the goddess adored these flowers. Everyone was looking forward to the holiday, but the rest of the candidates almost always played a background role on this day. And Rua was like a maid every year, while Ari was nominated for the role of Rose Princess for 2 years. Rua is sure that this year will be exactly the same. High-status girls were nominated from the royal family. Rua was walking to the place of the audience when suddenly water poured on her from the window. It immediately became clear to the girl that this was no accident. However, Ari couldn't do that, so someone else has a tooth on her. The candidate did not know what to do. After all, in this form, she cannot appear to the royal family. But it was already too late. A second prince happened on Rua's path. Sarid was disappointed by Miss Restato's unkempt appearance. Sven's brother is distinguished by a cold look and impeccable manners. He is demanding both of himself and of others, so it is not by chance that he was nicknamed the Prince of Ice and Snow. Although the appearance of the brothers has common features, their characters are significantly different. Sarid did not hold back and expressed his claims to Rua, going beyond the boundaries of usual communication. He demanded an explanation why the girl was defiling the royal garden. The applicant apologized for her appearance, but decided not to tell the truth, why it happened that way. Rua didn't want to frame Sven, so she said that she had splashed herself with water because of her carelessness and that she would change her clothes immediately. Sarid stated that this did not suit him, and Rua was only avoiding responsibility. The first prince wanted to know why his brother was spending time with Rua before she met the king. An angry Diana appeared and began scolding her fiancé. She saw how Sarid approached the girl in wet and cold clothes. Diana considers this gesture impolite. After all, the prince had to take care of the guest first, because she might catch a cold. Rua noticed how the strict prince had just become like a puppy that had been hurt. Mrs. Diana asked the candidates for her fiancé. She already knew who was in front of her and wanted to thank Rua for her achievement. Diana assumed that Rua would not have time to return to the temple, so she offered her one of her dresses. Sarid was not happy that his bride was inviting a stranger to her rooms. Diana reassured Sarid by pointing out that Rua had supported Sven in the recent incident. Moreover, this candidate is engaged in real good deeds during the holiday. Diana said if the prince is not going to help, then let him not interfere. The prince's bride gave Rua her dress, which she had not worn for a long time. The candidate felt uncomfortable. After all, this is the second gift from Sven that she spoils. Diane guessed that Rua's dress was a gift from Sven. It seemed to her that such care for another person was unnatural. Although she knew that these two were connected by caring for orphans, Rua was surprised that Diana knew about what was at the ball. The lady replied that she is a highly informed person in the social circle. Also, that woman with white hair who was saved by Rua, Diana's mother, she is very grateful to the candidate for saving her. Rua tried to convince that it was not her fault. However, Diana herself did not want to hear this, believing that Rua was simply too shy. She would like to chat with the candidate over a cup of tea, but now it is time for Rua to meet the king. His Highness thanked Rua for his contribution to the fight against demonic beings. For this, he offered any reward. The candidate could think carefully and only then voice her desire. Rua asked for the right to own the estate of Baron Restato. Its true owner died, and since there were no heirs, as required by law, the building became the property of the state for the next 10 years. After the expiration of this term, the building is subject to demolition, and exactly 10 years have passed this year. Due to the dark past of the estate, no one lived in it. Rua was never able to visit the temple that day to find out what happened. The girl could not even visit the graves of her relatives, as she did not receive permission from the priest. This house is very important to Rua personally because it is where she spent time with her family. If there is even a chance to get him back, she wants to do it. This has nothing to do with revenge, but only a small dream that she waved her hand at long ago. His Highness did not expect such a request, but saw no reason to refuse. The king reasoned that Rua might propose a betrothal to his son Sven. He noticed that his son has a great attention to detail, which he acquired from childhood through his upbringing. It was strange for Rua to hear this, because every time Sven mentions his father, he looks very casual. It is possible that the queen has merit in this. Rua replied that she did not ask for an engagement. After all, it would look very haughty, as for a person of her status. She is sure that no one, more than one of the candidates in the feast, and therefore is not a match for his Highness. As soon as the girl voiced her opinion, her chest began to tighten. The king noted that if she were not only a candidate, but a saint, then she could become an ideal match for Sven. Rua noted that the place of the saint has been empty for 10 years, and it is her impossible dream. Although she really wanted to be her before, now what she wants most is to prevent Ariana from taking that place. Rua was flying in the clouds at the moment when the same stranger who poured water on her pushed her down the stairs. The candidate already wanted to say goodbye to life, but Sven caught her at the last moment. Rua's white hair caught his attention. The girl remembered that in the morning the husband said that he would leave the estate on business, but apparently he had already returned. Sven asked how it happened that she almost fell, and why she took off the dress he had given her. Rua replied that she had accidentally soiled the outfit, but the prince did not believe him. So the girl was forced to admit that water was poured on her, and literally in a moment someone pushed her, quite possibly it was the same person. Rua doesn't remember who it was, but Sven assumed it was someone unrelated to Miss Torbius. In any case, he is sure that it is necessary to attach protection to the girl in the form of Shiji. The candidate tried to convince the prince that there was no need to take such serious measures. After all, this was a common occurrence for her before. Sven noted that Rua was too used to the pain. He added that not always difficult moments can be prevented, but Rua can at least tell him about them. The prince was already there. He wanted to kiss the girl when her old friend Louis appeared. The man threw himself into Rua's arms, which caught both her and his highness by surprise. Louis noted that the hair color has changed, but that doesn't change the fact that Miss Restado remains just as beautiful. Sven asked the apple tree, as he called it, to let Rua go. The behavior of Louis seemed to him to be ill-mannered, which was even comparable to the image of a representative of the royal family. Rua asked not to punish her husband. Louis was indeed a hired laborer. During his childhood, he took care of Rua and was even like an older brother to her. The man himself is from a small country in the north of the country. He was the first son and heir to the best store in the country. However, he had no ability to trade, so he ran away from his father, who forced him to trade, to the kingdom of Zito in search of work. Louis was lucky enough to find work at the Restado estate. Since the girl's mother was a hard-working person, there were few servants in their house, and Louis was the first person in a long time. His father immediately liked him because he was a conscientious worker and baked excellent buns. Rua noticed that Louis hadn't changed since then, even though 10 years had passed. She was worried about where Louis had gone. Soon his father found him and brought him home to his homeland, where everyone eagerly awaited his return. It turned out that the youngest sister had extraordinary talents in trade, so it was she who became the heiress, and Louis gained complete freedom and the opportunity to realize his dreams. About half a year ago, the man returned and began to serve Lady Diana from the Peridot family. Rua remarked that she was very happy for Louis. He objected, saying that he should have been the first to say it. After that tragedy, he kept thinking about Rua, and now they met again and Louis would like to tell something. He had always doubted that the death of the Restado family was a simple disease. The cause of their deaths was always thought to be an unknown disease, but Louis is certain that a specific person was involved. Rua demanded to explain on what basis the man made such a decision, but his attention was distracted by the maids. Louis didn't expect to see Rua accidentally spill the apples in the aisle. The man asked to talk to him later and then he would tell everything. Sven supported Louis that Rui needed to rest and collect her thoughts. The candidate is sure that Louis would not have scattered empty words, so he has reasons to think that her relatives were killed. So much happened yesterday that Rua didn't even have the strength to deal with Diana's dress. She plans to fix it up and return it to its owner. Preparations for the birthday celebration will begin tomorrow. The girl wondered who would become the next Rose Princess, and the thought of what Louis had said was also haunting. There were so many reasons to worry if her family had really been killed. Then there was a knock on the door. Rua opened it and saw Shiji. From now on, he follows Sven's order to protect the girl around the clock. She remembered that the prince was worried that she had been attacked again. Shiji also handed the candidate a letter from the royal palace. Rua was surprised that the certificate confirming her ownership of the estate had arrived so quickly. But she was quick to guess. Rua ran angrily into the greenhouse to Sven to complain to him about the fact that she was chosen as the Rose Princess this year. The prince immediately denied his involvement, saying that Diana nominated the girl. Moreover, many in the kingdom supported this decision in connection with the assistance in the case of Redmond. It was unanimous, excluding some persons, among whom was most likely His Highness Sarid. Sven wondered why Rua didn't want to be the Rose Princess. She believes that she is the worst option for this role. However, the prince thinks she's perfect, the more he wants to see her at the princess's meeting. His Highness remarked that this would be a great addition to their revenge. Rua will be able to publicly raise his status, which will greatly help in uncovering the crimes of the clergy. The girl agreed with the words of the prince and said that she would play this role perfectly and win the favor of the audience. However, unfortunately, another candidate for the Princess of Roses was nominated by the temple, and it is none other than Miss Torbias. At this time, Ariana flaunted her Rose Princess outfit in front of Galt. He was not too happy that the girl was forcing him to go to the ceremony, because he had a lot of important things to do. A gang of criminals roams the city, and the Order of Knights has received a request for help. Ariana began to manipulate Galt, who was more important to him, her, or his duties. The man was indignant that he was being forced to choose. Ariana began to cry, as if the groom hated her. This forced Galt to yield to the girl. In addition, she learned that Rua was chosen as the second princess. Ariana is looking forward to seeing her ex-girlfriend's downfall. Sven understands that the head of the clergy won't do anything about Rua, but Ariana can think of anything. The prince also noted that one should not forget the person who tried to push Rua down the stairs and who threw water on her. He suggests moving on to the next phase of their plan right after the ceremony. Sven dreams that the celebrations will be peaceful. His Highness noted that Rua will receive official ownership of the estate after the celebration. Although she still thinks about the words of Louis, she understands that she needs to concentrate on the first task, the Rose Princess. The girl, who tried to harm Rua more than once, watched the prince. She was angry when she saw the candidate next to him because she is his bride. The stranger firmly decided that she would never recognize Rua as the Princess of Roses. She wants to do everything in her power so that she no longer stands in her way to Prince Sven's heart. The birthday celebration lasts for 3 days. During the first days, the Rose Princesses go around the capital of the kingdom and distribute roses that were grown in the temple. The subject who received this sacred rose does not let it wither until the end of the holiday, and on the evening of the last day, the Rose Princesses will perform a melody on the piano on the stage of the royal capital. It was believed that the goddess Rush adored this instrument. After the performance, people throw roses on the stage instead of applause. This is a special holiday tradition. Handing out roses was not a difficult task for Rua. She occupied herself with playing the piano. After all, since I got into the temple, there was no opportunity to touch this instrument. That is why she wants to learn lessons from the former princess. Rua emphasized that Shiji did not have to accompany her everywhere. However, the assistant objected, saying that it was His Highness's order not to take a single step away from the girl, and asked her to address him by name. Shiji added that Rua is a valuable person to Sven, and therefore should treat the assistant according to her status. The girl was surprised because she and the prince are only allies. Rua noted that she would address Shiji formally in public, but by name in private. The assistant was satisfied with the girl's answer. Rua also wondered if Shiji was really willing to do anything for Sven. Once upon a time, His Highness saved Shiji as a small boy. He takes care of the assistant and says that he is not from the provincial town of the north, but in fact, he is from the slums. Shiji was dumped on the roadside. He survived as best he could, eating even mud. He learned from passers-by and gained experience from hired killers. He was repeatedly accused of theft. Once the rich men almost beat Shiji to death, until Sven intervened. The prince followed his movements for several days because the boy attracted attention. Sven thought that Shiji was too talented to die here like that, so he offered him his service. Since then, Shiji's life belongs to the prince, and he will follow any order. Rua realized her similarity to Shiji because Sven helped her by giving her the opportunity to live on. Now she is confidently moving towards her goals without feeling any obstacles. For her own revenge, she must perfectly play the role of the Rose Princess. The former princess, who was supposed to teach Rua to play the piano, was already waiting for her in the rooms. She turned out to be the Chancellor's only daughter, Sandra. Sandra, like Rua, is a candidate for the holiday. She alone prefers solitude, showing absolutely no interest in social life. Unlike Rua, no one criticizes Sandra. She has a high status and performs her duties with extreme restraint and indifference. Among the candidates, she has a higher rank than Ariana, which makes her an even more remarkable figure. Rua even thought at some point that the former Rose Princess was reading her mind. In fact, Sandra was watching so carefully not out of curiosity, but out of anger, because she did not understand why Rua was chosen. Before starting the piano lessons, Sandra asked Shiji to leave the room. After all, this is a private lesson, and it is designed only for the Princess of Roses. Shiji agreed to stay outside the door. However, before leaving, he warned that if he suspected something, he would break in without permission. Madame Sandra was annoyed why a girl like Rua was getting so much attention from Shiji and Sven. Rua made out Sven's name amid the murmuring. Sandra abruptly turned to the candidate and her pendant flew off. Rua picked him up, which made the girl even more annoyed. With a startling scream, Sandra snatched the pendant from Rua's hands but soon apologized for this storm of emotions. The candidate suddenly remembered that she had seen this ornament before. It belongs to the person who threw water on her and pushed her down the stairs. No doubt Nerna is the one who attacked Rua, but the pendant is only a small piece of evidence. The girl cannot understand why she did it. Is it just because the candidate at the festival became the next Princess of Roses? Rua decided to keep quiet and watch how the situation would progress. Nerna Sandra pointed out that there are a number of points that need to be understood in order to teach young people. To begin with, she offered to play one of the few. The former princess recalled that last year Ariana performed Thorns of the Rose. Nerna Sandra chose Prayer Composition. All those tunes were high-level heavy. Ariana was skilled in both dancing and playing the piano. Nerna Sandra remarked that although Rua would not play as well as them, she was also from a noble family, and she thinks that the girl can cope with at least one of the proposed ones. Rua noticed Sandra's scathing expression and looked down on her without even trying to hide it. The candidate admitted that she has problems, but this does not mean that she cannot cope. The girl added that there was talk of their mother's talents in social circles. Sandra disagreed, noting that her skills were surprisingly limited. Rua wondered why the former princess was trying to make fun of her mother. It made her angry. Rua said she would choose Girl's Song to perform, as it is her mother's favorite song. Sandra assured that it was too heavy, and that it would be better for the girl to choose a lighter one. After reviewing all options from Nerna Sandra, the candidate confidently noted that these works are children's ballads. If she plays them, she will definitely become a laughing stock. Sandra complained to her father that Rou Restato was not chosen as the Rose Princess this year. The husband apologized to his daughter, noting that her candidacy also rose, but in the end all the votes went to Mrs. Restato. Father is sure that Rua's powers are not without flaws. Besides, she is an orphan. Despite this, Prince Sven at the event was very casual with Rua, considering the fact that his bride is Sandra. The father reassured his daughter that it is almost impossible to become the Rose Princess twice. Ariana became a princess for several years in a row because she enjoys the attention of the heads of the church. Sandra cried that it was not fair and that her father had promised that he would do everything for her. The chancellor tried to appease his daughter, saying that he would buy her everything she wanted. Sandra admitted that her only desire is Prince Sven. She begged the heavens for him because he was a true idol for her, whom she adored above all else. She was offended that the prince was only paying attention to the candidate at the festival. The girl does not need the title of Princess of Roses. She wants Sven to not look at her again. Since the day they met, Sandra wants to see Sven again. She constantly returns in her thoughts to the moment when the prince smiled at her. Sandra is already his bride. In whatever devious ways she has to act, she will become the Princess of the Roses and will definitely attract Sven. Her goal is to get rid of Rou Restato once and for all. Sandra noted that the candidate should at least show a decent performance. Rua is free to practice playing the piano in this room. But if Sandra does not have at least a drop of confidence in her, then the former Princess of Roses may refuse. Rua was constantly bullied in the temple, and Sandra didn't have the courage to do it. Rua is sure that Sandra will refuse her because it can be seen in the way she looks at her with disdain. Even now, the candidate cannot answer the former Rose Princess, and Shiji noticed the hostility in Sandra's behavior. The assistant suggested that Sven should be informed about this, but Rua refused. The girl will manage on her own. Sandra insulted her mom, so Rua will pay her back in the same coin, but in her own way. Unurn Sandra was not attracted by beautiful things. Since childhood, she was interested in the evil to some extent. Paintings painted in blood, cursed dolls. She always begged her father for things with an interesting story. The day she met Sven, she was struck by his cold, good looks. The girl felt a mental connection with him and believed that only she could understand the man and become his bride. Since then, they had not seen each other, and Sandra humbly waited for Sven to come to her. But a strange girl appeared on the horizon. Sandra is sure that Rua will only hurt the prince. Sandra hoped that the candidate would give up the role of the Rose Princess, but since then it has been 3 weeks and 3 days until the ceremony. Although the girl assumes that Rua's good performance is out of the question. Suddenly, Nerna Sandra heard an impressive performance of the most complex melody, which she could not have coped with herself. She was quite angry when she realized it was Rua. She couldn't believe that someone as flawed as the candidate could play so skillfully. Rua learned this tune when she was just 7 years old, thanks to her mother. Rua Restato did not want to choose this composition, but Diana insisted. The candidate came to return the dress to the lady and to talk at the same time. Diana is famous for her remarkable abilities among the aristocracy. Even Sarid appreciated her talent in playing the piano. Therefore, Rua wanted to enlist the support of Madame. Lewis added that as a child, Rua also showed remarkable ability to play the piano, a talent she inherited from her mother. The girl noted that a lot has changed since then. Rua hoped Diana would give her some advice. The lady immediately understood that there was a smell of rivalry between the two princesses of roses, and therefore it was necessary to bring everything to perfection. Diana clarified that her teaching methods will be rigorous. Rua will have to work both in the morning and in the evening, carefully following all recommendations without any refusals. The candidate, Nurna Sandri, noted that she felt all kinds of pain, and therefore she would not give up so easily. She will not give up the title of Princess of Roses and will play this role until the last. Rua stated that a person who could only hurt others was not fit for the title of Saint or Rose Princess. Humiliated Sandra ran away from the room. Shiji praised Rua's performance and her firm stance. Sandra asked herself why it looked like she had lost. Just then, Ariana appeared and declared that she saw everything that Mrs. Nerne was doing. However, she comforted Nerne Sandra by assuring her that Rua was just a hindrance. Ariana tried to convince Madame Sandra that Rua's true intentions were not so noble. While Rue won't be able to be stripped of the title, her elimination is entirely possible. Shiji occasionally leaves Ryu alone briefly, giving Sandra a chance to strike. The days of the holiday have come, and Rua has to distribute all the roses within 2 days, but she found it more difficult than expected. Confronted in the corridor with Ariana, the rival behaved surprisingly naturally. Although they are both princesses of roses, they are rarely seen. Next time they will meet on the last day of the performance. Rua worried that Ariana might be up to something by then. 2 more knights besides Shiji were to accompany Rue everywhere. Finally, Sven appeared in front of the girl. For a long time, he was busy with the business related to the delegates of other countries. Rua asked if the prince was still preoccupied today. Sven explained that delegates are only interested in entertainment, which makes interacting with them a chore. Sarid wanted to blame everything on his brother, but Sven made him do it, and he ran away. The prince shared that he was not on the verge of life and death because he could not see Rua. His Highness feels jealous because Shiji gets to spend more time with her. Rua realized that with the prince by her side, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. In the last days, the girl's nerves were on the verge of being unable to spend time with Sven. She was also lonely. The prince is glad that he managed to meet Rua before leaving and to see her in this outfit. Sven admitted that Rua was the most beautiful princess that ever existed, and he wanted her to greet the people with her head held high. The prince is looking forward to her performance. People gladly accepted roses from Rua, but she needs more time to distribute them all. Shiji was worried that someone would take the opportunity to attack the girl, so he asked her to be careful. Rua spotted a pickpocket in the crowd. Shiji was about to intervene, but the girl stopped him. She noted that she can cope thanks to her status and not attract unnecessary attention. The candidate approached her husband to hand her a rose. Lowering his guard, Rua touched his hand and applied force. The thief lost his balance and fell, spilling all the stolen goods. The people, noticing their things, got angry with the thief and began to beat him. One woman noticed that it was Rua who helped catch the offender and was glad that her activity continued to be fruitful. That woman turned out to be an old acquaintance, Charlotte. She appeared at the celebration with her husband, Alan. After resolving the incident with Redmond, Alan proposed to Charlotte. The proceeds were donated to the victims of Redmond and their families. So many people have moved up because of it. Since then, damage from magical creatures has been eliminated. Charlotte believes that this is a credit to HS Sven and Rue. The candidate could heal not only their physical wounds, but also their mental ones. Charlotte is convinced that Rua is a real saint. Rua can't believe that she was the one who healed them, using a power meant only to cause pain. She handed Charlotte a rose, and the girl in return promised to throw it to the candidate on the stage. Charlotte shared that, according to an old custom, after the performance of the princesses, people throw a rose on the stage of the one who, in their opinion, is more respectable. These roses are like voting. The criterion is good piano playing and the number of good deeds. Rua thought that the fact that the people would vote for a specific candidate would not affect anything. However, this will mean their support and therefore may affect the girl's plans in the future. At that time, Ariana was handing out her yellow rose and asked the people to throw away this particular flower after playing the piano. Galt noticed that the girl was in a good mood today, although when she noticed a larger number of roses, compared to the previous year, she got irritated. But Galt is sure that Ariana is still a good girl because she treats the elderly and children well. Suddenly, the boy who was given the rose burst into tears. Galt inquired what had happened, and the child's mother replied that there were thorns left on the rose and the boy was injured. Galt suggested that the rose princess, Ariana, heal the wound. However, the boy refused because the princess of the yellow rose scared him very much. The mother explained that her son had been attacked by a mysterious magical beast last year, and it had left an imprint on his heart. Ariana was the first to respond to the trouble, but the candidate refused to heal the boy, considering the wound too serious. The woman begged Ari, but she only pushed them away and screamed. Not long after that, another candidate came running and healed the wound. Now the boy is convinced that Ariana is not good. She could not heal him and got angry. The woman said that the commander should not attach importance to this conversation and that they would heal the wound at home. Now Galt wondered if Ari was real and who he was pretending to be. Who abandons people who ask for help? The commander saw, now he doubts that the bride healed his grave wound. On the second day of the holiday, Rua was already tired. People were eager to get roses from her. Even when playing the role of a princess and interacting with the people, the guards always stayed close by, never retreating even for a minute. Rua had received some payment for her role as the Rose Princess, and naively thought there would be time to do some shopping. Suddenly, the girl saw a bottle of beautiful red color among the goods. The vial looked like Sven's eyes. The saleswoman saw the interest of the Rose Princess and offered to take a closer look at the product. This perfume is made from a rare flower. This plant grows only in the southern island state. Rua sniffed the scent and felt not only the freshness, but also the sweetness, which now reminded her even more of Sven. The seller noted that this perfume is in great demand among men from the island, so it will be an excellent option for a gift. The Rose Princess thought about whether it would be appropriate to give it to Sven, because before he was the only one who pleased her with gifts. Shiji sensed that Rua was thinking about the prince. Although Sven does not use much perfume, he is interested in the culture of the southern islands. He dreams of establishing diplomatic relations with them someday. The aide also remarked that the prince would love any gift from the Rose Princess. Rua decided to take the perfume, but she didn't know when she would get the chance to hand it over. Rua and Shiji heard strange noises. The assistant decided to find out what happened, and they found the unbelievable. Near the bar, there were gambling drinking competitions with bets on the winners. Shiji was confident that he would win as usual Malta from the butcher shop, but the stranger was frighteningly strong. Rua noticed that the heavy drinker was Miss Diana, and Louis was standing behind her. Louis shared that Sarah had planned with Diana to secretly watch the celebration, as Sven once did. For the first time, Diana enjoyed the time spent. However, then Sarid was busy receiving guests. The bride offered him support, but he politely asked her to enjoy the festivities on her own. Lady Diana, irritated, began to behave contrary to aristocratic standards. Rua noted that Sarid is not capable of understanding the depths of women's feelings. The elite guards of the ducal family are waiting in various places. After the celebration is over, Louis would like to speak with Rua alone and clear up one question regarding the death of her family. Rua has accepted the fact that revealing the truth may hurt her, but is confident in moving on, and now it's time for the last day of celebration. It is time for the final part of the ceremony and the speech of the head of the clergy. Attacks by magical creatures in recent years have caused damage and great harm to the population, but thanks to the temple, it was possible to reduce them. However, that is why there is a temple and candidates in the holiday, and now everyone can happily spend the last day of the holiday this year. The head of the clergy noted that everyone should be grateful to the temple and the goddess Rush. Rua noticed that the head looks like a good person. He touches people's souls in his speech. And no one even suspects that he is behind the scenes directing all the attacks of the creatures. Before the performance, Rua met an ex-girlfriend. Ariana immediately noticed the frightened face of her rival. The girl noted that she would be the first to speak and Rua's comparison would not be avoided. Ari sardonically emphasized that she differs from her rival in that she has a home to return to, and she can also be called a worthy aristocrat who received an education. Rua noticed that Ari's attitude towards her had not changed. Miss Torbiaz said that if Rua played well, she could get at least some roses, so she advised her not to lose heart and play. Rua decided to ask if Ari had intended to use her since their first meeting. After all, when she first came to the temple, there was no one with her, and the other candidates did not want to associate with her. However, it was Ariana who approached Rua to meet her and say that the girl made a good impression on her. Ari noted that even then it was the impression of a person who could be used. Miss Torbius added that no one would want to be friends with such a flawed saint and be on equal footing. Rua finally realized that her former friend had been like this since childhood. With such a ruined mood, Rua could not hold back and easily grab Ariana's hand. However, above all, she wants to shed light on her sins and the true nature of the high priest. Rua wants the perfect revenge, so she shouldn't be swayed by her emotions. You need to hide your strength and wait for the right moment. Ariana was the first to speak. Rua shouted after her that one day she would get what she deserved, to which the ex-girlfriend replied, if she lives to this moment. Ariana and Sandra agreed to eliminate Mrs. Restato, that is, their rival. Everyone had their own motives. Sandra arranged the stage with a simple structure. As soon as Rui's turn comes, the stage will fall on her, and it will look like an accident. People cheered for Ari when she played. Rua noticed that her rival's performance was filled with confidence. When Miss Restato started playing, all her thoughts were about Sven. She wanted him to be present at the celebration. At that time, Sandra was looking forward to the moment when she could pull the rope. Shiji rushed to stop the crime in time. Most of all, Sandra didn't expect to see Sven. He learned about everything the girl had done and was still trying to do. However, the assistant had already dealt with the stage, and even if Sandra pulled the rope, the stage would not fall. The girl tried to justify herself and asked the prince to believe her bride. Sven was surprised by such a statement. He did not remember that he had a bride. Shiji boldly confirmed that this was a mistake. The prince sympathized with the minister that he had such a silly daughter and that his family was dragging him down. It has long been said in the kingdom that the time has come for the minister to hand over the post to the next person. He was once actually more worthy of his post, but his current actions prove that is a thing of the past. It is obvious that his priority was not the well-being of the people, but his own benefit. Moreover, a successor has already been found. His candidacy was approved by Sarid. However, Minister Sandra did not want to remain in power. The king entrusted this matter to Sven's brother, but the behavior of his daughter, which will later be made public, will put everything in its place. Sven stated that it would be nice to make his brother his debtor. Sandra tried to persuade the prince to feel sorry for her. She showed a pendant inside which was his portrait. Thus, she wanted to prove her love for him. The girl was convinced that they were connected by fate and she was doing all this for his sake. Sven, with a sly smile, declared that he does not like intrusive people. Sandra, looking into the eyes of her love, realized that she was just an obstacle on the way. The man added that if she wasn't the minister's daughter, she wouldn't have any value for him. But even this value will soon be lost. He was turning a blind eye to Rua's insults, but now she was trying to hurt him, and this made him as angry as possible. Punishment is inevitable for trying to harm the Rose Princess. Sven said that Sandra will not see him again. He snapped his fingers and the knights took the girl away. Sandra knew that she was charmed by the gloomy coldness that was always hidden behind his beauty. However, he turned out to be a much scarier person than she thought. She was wrong from the start. Shiji shared that it was quite easy since Miss Sandra left a lot of evidence. If Mrs. Torbius had been in her place, this would not have happened. That girl acts cleverly. Ariana is just as difficult a rival as the head of the clergy, but Sven will no longer allow them to do whatever they want. Shiji inquired about the punishment for Miss Nerne. Sven said that although she had fallen so low, she was still a candidate for the place of the saint, who also performed the role of Princess of Roses. It will be fair to send her to a small temple. She will no longer be sanctified by the place of the saint. Problem candidates are usually sent to that temple. Sven also thought about the fact that it is time to openly talk about the minister's resignation. He could have kept his position if he had chosen to rise to the occasion. Now the only thing left for him is to move to a cozy rural area. Sven suddenly realized that Rua had finished the performance and he had missed it completely. It occurred to him to just play by himself next time, or even play a duet with the violin. The crowd was delighted with the performance of the Princess of the White Rose. They appreciated the complex melody she chose. There were those who hesitated to throw a white or yellow flower. However, Ariana did not appreciate such delight towards Rua. And Nerna made a mistake. She already knew that she was not a necessary girl. and would rather later remember her name as an instigator. But the Princess of the Yellow Rose is sure that no one will believe Nirna. The head of the clergy came out and announced that the holiday was over. He asked to throw all the roses into the air. Galt came only towards the end of the holiday. Finally, he can exhale. Although there were minor troubles, everything passed without serious incidents. Ari's performance was great, but Rui's melody blew him away. The commander cannot see in her the candidate who mocked Ari. He noticed that there are many more citizens who fervently support Rue and White Roses. However, on Galt's conviction, it was Ariana who cured him. He cannot doubt his bride, so he wants to ask her everything directly. The man wants to share his suspicions and at the same time praise her performance. Galt actually witnessed her shouting and humiliating the maids. Ari was angry that there were noticeably more white roses. She cannot believe that her competitor's game is much better and thinks everyone is a blind fool. She could not wait for His Holiness to carry out his plan. Arya turned on a fool in front of Galt and wanted him to comfort her. She tried to convince her husband that it was all her ex-girlfriend who was mocking her, used tricks. Galt noted that this is one of the reasons why he came. The girl interrupted him and asked if he thought Rui's performance was better. Ari burst into tears that her husband was not on her side either. He realized that he would not be able to question the girl, and therefore he will have to find out what is being hidden from him himself. Galt admitted that he was guilty and asked Arya not to cry. Rua breathed a sigh of relief that she was finally able to remove the rose princess dress, and now she wouldn't be drawing any more attention to herself. The celebration was indeed over, judging by Ari's face. The candidate noticed most of the white roses. Rua was glad that her ex-girlfriend was disappointed, but she was planning revenge and now there is nothing to lose. Sven approached the girl, who thought that she had already returned to the temple. The candidate noted that the crew was waiting and asked if he was afraid to show himself so openly. Sven noted that after the holiday, everyone is busy with their own affairs. The prince admitted that Rua coped well with her role. He could not properly enjoy the performance as urgent matters suddenly arose. Sven added that she fulfilled her part of the plan with dignity, as was expected of his goddess. Rua laughed, saying that she was far from a saint, but not a goddess. Although it sounds deserved from the lips of the prince, she just wants to be with him for a little while. Rua held out the gift to Sven and asked him to accept it. The girl wanted to somehow repay him for everything he does for her, and although it may not be the kind of gift that a member of the royal family deserves. The prince was moved and hugged Rue. Sven could never have thought that Rua would bring him a present, so he was really happy. The girl was surprised because perfumes from the market do not have such a great value. Sven objected, because the choice she made was worth more to him than all the treasures in the world. He promised to protect the perfume and always use it with love. When they complete their mission of exposing the head of the clergy and Rua's personal vendetta, Sven has something to say to her afterward. Along with this secret, there is much more that he wants to tell. If the fact is revealed now, they will be able to confuse and prevent revenge. What's more, he doesn't want to do anything that could shake her resolve. Sven doesn't want to seem like a burden. Rua can't imagine the prince interfering with her in any way. What she has become is thanks to him. The girl is very grateful to Sven for this. But the prince still refused to tell her everything right now. Sven assumed that Rua was very tired, so he wished her a good rest. He will offer to prepare together for what awaits them. Rua knew that after his words, she definitely wouldn't be able to sleep. During several days after the celebration, neither Ariana nor the head of the clergy took any steps. Time passed relatively calmly, but still, something happened. The minister, who previously did not want to hand over the position to his successor at the royal palace, eventually offered his resignation. And for some reason he went to the village himself, as if he was running away from something. Nirna, whose exhaustion was evident, also left the temple. The last time she was seen, she no longer had that pendant. Rua assumed that Sven had something to do with it. Today, on the orders of Mrs. Diana, the girl is going to visit the Duchy of Peridot in order to meet with Louis and learn more about the death of her family. As long as Louis didn't tell her, she was sure everything would be fine. Her determination, for which Sven worries so much, remains steadfast. This is her inner strength that will never fail. Ryu met Diana and immediately asked to leave the formality at the door. Louis was originally going to talk to her, she recalled, and Diana only provided space for him to do so. Next time, Diana wants the candidate to have dinner with her. Rua did not react positively because the lady is really wonderful. She exudes warmth and comfort. Diana noted that the grandmother also wanted to meet the girl. Rua met Marquis Santalou, whom Sven remembered. He is one of those aristocrats who cooperates with the head of the clergy. At this time, Sarid burst into Sven's office. The second prince noticed that his brother was angry as usual. He assumed it was because his fiancée had finally gotten over him. Sarid visited his younger brother just in time to ask about the candidate for the feast, who is currently at the Peridot family estate. The man wondered why this visit was arranged. Sven stated that it was just that Miss Diana and Rua had matched personalities. He added that the candidate had gone there so that the bespectacled apple grower would tell about the death of the family. But Sven did have a thought to accompany Rua. Sarid replied that this is because his younger brother has been doing whatever he wants since childhood, and it is a matter of mistrust. The first prince is sure that his brother is still doing something in secret from him. Sven did not tell his brother about the dark side of the temple. He takes into account the opinion of his father, although at this stage everything depends exclusively on him. There has always been a delicate balance between the temple and the royal family. Even father and brother will not be able to do anything. If they do not prepare well, their evidence will be inconclusive. Therefore, Sven reassured his brother, saying that doing something in secret is bad form, and he always works for the good of the people. Sarid was tired of Sven's excuses. The second prince added that it would be unwise of him to waste any more time following him. It seemed to him that recently his brother had begun to smell very strange. Sven laughed and showed his perfume, brought from the southern island states. The man shared that it was a gift from Rua. Sarid stopped his brother and spared him the details. Sven looked at the perfume and immediately remembered the candidate. He wondered what his goddess was doing. Rua hoped that Peridot's family was not connected to the head of the clergy's plans. Diana began to worry that the Marquis of Saint-Éloi stopped showing up at social events. The man said that he came to the estate just to say hello. The man added that he did not have time for a long meeting. Diana noted that their family is one of the most influential among the aristocrats, so every year after the celebration, the heads of other families visit them. Rua remembered that her father used to go to Peridot's family every year as well. Therefore, she had no reason to suspect Peridot's house because of the sudden appearance of Marquis Saint-Éloi. Rua realized that she had become too suspicious of everyone. She introduced herself to the Marquis, after which his face showed more fear than surprise when he realized who was in front of him. The Marquis explained that he was simply very surprised that, in addition to aristocrats, female candidates were coming to Peridot's estate for the celebration. Diana noted that Rua is her grandmother's savior. She helped her during the attack of the beast. Saint-Éloi apologized for his ignorance in the matter. Recently, he handed over his duties to his younger brother and withdrew from social life. Diana noted that he should take more care of his health. Rua also noted that the Marquis looked ill. Diana suggested to her husband that he be examined by a candidate during the holiday. However, he refused, saying that he was in a hurry. Lady Peridot suggested that the Marquis's behavior was due to an unknown illness of his son, the sole heir. Memories of the death of Rui's family come to her by themselves. However, Louis, with whom she actually plans to talk, believes that someone intervened in their deaths. And a similar story of one of the aristocrats, an ally of the head of the clergy, Marquis Saint-Éloi. First, Rua discussed this theory with Sven, then she talked with Diana's grandmother, which is why she was late for the meeting with Louis. He shared that everyone in Peridot's family treated the servants well. He was lucky enough to be here because of his father's connections, as well as the experience he gained working for the Ristato family. Rua noted that with his jovial nature anyone liked him. Louis objected because His Highness Sven did not like him. He served an apple pie on the table, which caused incredible nostalgia in Rui. Rua remembered a moment from her childhood when her mother sent her daughter to visit a neighboring lord whose wife was a good friend of hers. The girl did not understand why she was going alone, since her father was also at home at the moment. She wanted to spend this time with her family. Mom explained that today is the day of her independence, and next time they will go as a whole family. My brother also wanted to go, but he had a fever, so his parents forbade him. Little Rua offered to cure him, because when she grows up, she wants to become a beautiful holy lady. The mother scolded her daughter because when the girl uses her powers, she hurts herself, and it does not want their daughter to use her abilities to harm herself. Mom told her that there is no need to use force for such trifles. The brother assured his sister that everything was fine with him and drank the medicine. Rua filled in that it was really a small thing for her. The last time in the city, she easily healed the boy's bruise, but she only lost an earring. Her mother praised her for growing up to be a good girl. That is why she considers it cruel that her daughter got such an ability. She doesn't tell her to never use force, but asks her to be careful. Rua was forced to treat someone only when there was no other choice. Louis and little Rua arrived to visit, but already on the spot, the man discovered that he had forgotten a gift for the lady on the way. The girl asked if Louis already knew how to drive a horse. The man assured that his father had taught him, saying that a good trader is good at everything. Louis, turning back for the package, noticed two suspicious people. Strangers talked about an experiment related to a rose. It is worth its power to penetrate the body, stay overnight, and the job will be done. Louis thought he heard a familiar voice. Rua can't wait to get home. She also liked the visit, but she wants her parents there. Louis noted that only a day had passed, and the girl was already sad. The man shared that the mother asked her friend to look after her daughter just for one day. He assumed it had something to do with the letter they had received the day before. Rua and Louis returned home, but it was empty and no one met them. The man smelled a very sharp rose. On the way, he noticed a black petal. Walking further, he saw an unconscious maid. The girl's entire family also lay without signs of life. On the body of each of them was a mark in the form of a rose. Rua assumed that her relatives were sick and wanted to heal them. Louis stopped the girl from touching them. The man was horrified. He did not know what happened here until they were gone. The lady muttered about the ovation in broad daylight as she breathed her last. Louis thought his employer was talking about a tune her daughter was learning to play on the piano. Louis shared that this was all he remembered that day. Rua agreed, because then her entire family and her beloved maid died. Immediately after that, she was taken to the temple and separated from Louis. Then she heard that the cause of death was an unknown disease. Allegedly, the father traveled to another country on business related to charity and contracted a local disease there, which infected the entire estate. It was an exotic, incurable disease, and the fact that she and Louis did not get infected was explained by the fact that the girl has healing abilities and Louis was born in another country. But these explanations were supported by nothing but empty assumptions, and no one was ever able to say or verify anything. When she was in the temple, she tried to forget about these painful memories. However, now that Rua had heard the story from Louis, many things seemed suspicious. The man collected information about this incident while he was in his family. And already after his return, he conducted an independent investigation. Once he managed to talk to an eyewitness, and he said that guests were leaving the house that day. Their description matched the appearance of two suspicious people Louis had seen in the woods. He recognized one of them by his voice. He had heard him before at performances. Louis could swear it was the head of the clergy. He still finds it hard to believe. Rua was shocked and did not understand what the high priest's purpose was. Did he really want to make her an orphan and send her to a temple to be used later? However, she does not believe that this was the main reason. The girl thought she heard the head of the clergy talking about the real plan, even when she made her way into the tower to ally with Sven. It is no less interesting for her to learn about black roses and their experiment. Behind the death of her family may be hidden a much more terrible conspiracy of the head of the temple and his entourage. Rua asked why Louis thought Mom had mentioned the applause in broad daylight. Rua is sure that her mother wanted to say something important. Suddenly, their discussion was interrupted by Diana. She noticed that the company was very upset and apologized for disturbing them. The lady wanted to show Rua something. She came across the portrait in her diary and wanted to give it to her girlfriend since Mr. Sven is also there. Rua examined the portrait more closely. It seemed to her that Sven was very similar to the boy whom she once met and healed. Diana reminded Louis that it was better not to anger Sven and not to sit with the guest. The girl showed Louis the certificate of ownership of the Restado family estate. Now they have access to the building. There might be clues to the secret her mother was trying to warn her about. In the near future, Rua is going to go there alone, since this case should not be known by the environment ahead of time. If there was even a small leak, Louis could be dead. If Rua sends a request for an escort to the Knights, it will probably reach Mr. Galt and then Ari. And that's why this option is dangerous. She could also ask Shiji for help. However, he is currently running some errand for Sven and will be busy for some time. Rua is sure that it will be safest to go alone. In order not to happen, the girl can return the pain thanks to the Force. Louis resolutely declared that he would accompany Miss given the current circumstances. He is best suited for this role. Rua wondered what her mother was trying to tell her then. She promised that she would find out about the death of her family, that the fight was not worth it. Louis would never have thought that the day would come when he would be able to ride a lady. Rua once again refused to borrow clothes from Mrs. Diana. The man noticed that Diana didn't ask why, but without a doubt she borrowed the best horse in the Peridot family. And the lady is also deeply grateful to Rua for her help. Louis decided to take the opportunity to ask Rua what they had with Prince Sven. He heard that they helped orphans together, but he felt that they had some kind of connection. A man is not going to find out even if they are close in a relationship, but he wanted to make sure that the person who would become Rua's future husband. The girl did not let Louis finish. She doesn't even think about it since Sven is from the royal family and something like that just won't happen. Rua had almost reached the estate and the place where Louis said he had seen suspicious persons. A knight burst into Galt's office to report on magical beasts that had escaped death. There are actually no victims, but there are eyewitness accounts. The commander hoped that everything ended at the moment when Redmond was captured, but apparently these magical creatures were hiding somewhere. The knight remarked that when Galt makes such a face, it reminds him of his father. Galt's father was an excellent commander of the knightly order, and his son became his excellent successor. Recently, subordinates have been worried about Galt's disputes with his bride. It is not good for a commander to create a reason for the anxiety of subordinates. Galt only took over his father's business. But the truth is that he has little experience in this. Galt said he would take a little break from dealing with magical creatures. He believes that an investigation should be conducted. The commander said to call him in case of danger. The garden at the temple seemed to him beautiful as always. However, from time to time he remembers how he was brought here when he died, and dear Ari saved him. But despite this, only the figure of Mrs. Restato comes to mind. Galt decided to find out from the people of the temple about the day when Ari supposedly healed him. The commander stopped the maid to ask. The girl was confused and did not know what to do, to tell the truth, which only she knows, or to remain silent. Galt's role model has always been his father. He wants to become the same person, become famous and be called a national hero. My father always said to follow the right path. He trusted these words and trained hard every day to live up to his father's expectations. However, Galta's mother did not share her husband's aspirations. She said that if the son will only follow other people's instructions, he will never notice what is happening around him, and thus will lose something really important. A few years later, the father was wounded during a mission while protecting a subordinate. He left the post of the head of the order, because the wounds were too severe even for the servants of the temple. My mother no longer maintained a relationship with my father. She withdrew without a divorce, going to her parents' house. After that, Galt continued his father's work. Galt wondered if he had succeeded in becoming the man his father wanted him to be. At the same time, the image of the mother appeared. He didn't want to die like this. The man finally woke up and saw a fair-haired girl next to him. The head of the clergy shared that Mrs. Ari never left him for a moment, and it was she who healed him. The moment he regained consciousness, he thought he had been saved by the goddess herself. Galt came to his father to tell him that he was planning to propose to the girl who saved him. He swore to his father that he would protect his future wife. However, shortly before he was saved, the feeling that he continued to be wrong about something did not leave him. Galt's assistant came with new news. The number of victims of magical creatures is increasing. The only catch is the old estate that used to belong to the Restato family. The commander immediately went there. The maid was never able to tell about Miss Ari's lie and the truth about Aruu. On the way, Rua and Louis encountered a magical creature that immediately attacked them. The candidate understands that it is necessary to touch the animal as soon as possible and calm it down. The magical creature managed to release the poison at Louis before Rua paralyzed it. Although the girl has decided that she will never heal again, now is not the situation that forces her to wait. Louis knew from an early age that Rui had a knack for picking up mutilations. However, I always respected her desire to heal people, and he does not want to rely on the skill that caused her suffering. Louis assured the girl that this poison had an antidote in the form of sabara berries. Rua is sure that these berries are poisonous and cause stomachache. The man added that there is no poison, there is concentration. However, Louis could not find the powder of these berries, although he is sure that he took them with him. Rua realized that she could recreate the effect with her power. She could never have thought that she could heal not only with the gift of healing, but with the power to return pain. Rua asked Louis to keep it a secret. When they entered the house, they found that the house was in good condition. Now that it belonged to Rui, Louis said he would clean in it. Later, Rua and Louis noticed uneven dust on the floor and fairly fresh mail tracks. Then they heard a loud sound and realized that they were not alone in the house. The man who was attacked by the magical beast lost consciousness for a while, but eventually regained consciousness. But there is a problem with this person. As far as the assistant commander knows, he is a wanted thief. There is a question about his being in a place where there is nothing but the old estate. Perhaps the thieves were interested in the owner's belongings. But on the way he was attacked by a beast and he was injured. There were 2 thieves. It is possible that the other managed to escape, or was also injured by the monster's paws. Galt assumed that he could continue with what he had planned, and therefore told him to hurry. The stranger told Rua and Louis not even to hope for the estate's valuables, for they were within his sight. The girl remarked that it was just a thief who chose a good time when the guards left the estate. Be that as it may, but the man has his eye on a place that is very valuable to Rui, so he won't get away with it. The girl confidently stated that he made a mistake with the choice of the estate and with the person he took hostage. Rua hallucinates the man from a poisonous plant. What she saw when she took that symptom away was the demise of her family. She feels wrong when she conveys this to people. The girl offered to look for clues to the truth that her mother wanted to tell. Relying only on luck will not work. The key will be her last words. The title of the melody, Ovation in Broad Daylight. Sven really wanted to see Ruo, but he couldn't do it. He had to work. And Shiji has not yet returned and does not want to listen to his younger brother. The prince heard a familiar tune that Rua played at the celebration and emphasized that it suited Rua very well in terms of atmosphere. At this time, Louis and Rua found what they were looking for. A music box with a secret, the melody of which is Ovation in Broad Daylight. You can put small, valuable things in it. Only Rua and her mother knew about it. As it turned out, Rui's mother hid the key in this casket before her death, as she wanted only her daughter to find it. This key was from Miss Ristado's personal diary. She drove it every day, and it is quite likely that there is something of value there. Rui's mother was dying, and somehow found the strength to voice the name of the melody. This girl feels her will. Ovation in Broad Daylight is the last work of a composer who was considered a true genius. It was created in honor of those who triumphed on Judgment Day, when the sins of the aristocracy, through which the common people suffered, were finally condemned. Let the sinners pay for everything in the light of day, and the righteous await an ovation. This is the meaning of the melody. Mother's diary was on the bookshelf. Between the pages was a letter from the head of the clergy. From the side of the temple, he wanted to invite Rua as a candidate for the feast. But the mother, aware of her daughter's defect, continued to refuse, and that is why the high priest wanted to meet and talk with her. There is a law according to which all female candidates in the world must be in the temple. There can be a refusal only if it is essential. The day they were supposed to meet was the day Rua and Louis left the estate. Given that the girl herself admires the saint, her parents could not allow her to enter the temple. Moreover, the high priest did not arouse their trust. The former scientist of the country, who was also supported by the aristocracy, was engaged in research in the field of medicine and studying the possibilities of healing by saints. He was expelled from the country after conducting inhumane experiments. Negotiations took place between the scientist and the high priest. Rui's father happened to witness this. That day, the high priest accepted the refusal. It seemed strange to Rui's parents and that he came because of the escort. Although Mrs. Ristado was glad that the high priest had backed down, she had a bad feeling. At that moment, the younger brother, Louis, ran to his parents with a black rose in his hands. The maid reported that a flower seller was passing by. Usually it was an old lady, but this time it was a young guy. In honor of the acquaintance, he gave Louis a rose. Mrs. Ristado went to see why the husband and son did not return for so long. Entering the room, she smelled a strange and overwhelming smell of roses, and her family lay unconscious on the floor. The woman immediately understood that this was the work of the high priest, and perhaps he was helped by an ally in the form of that scientist. Apparently the rose was burned by some kind of virus, and she should at least inform Rui. In the last moments of her life, the woman wrote everything down in her diary, and then she returned to her husband and son to meet the end with her family. Louis noticed that Rua was too quiet, but she has just learned that the painful death of her family was part of a cruel conspiracy. Although she behaves discreetly, she hides great sadness in her soul. Rua has received a lot of information, but before doing anything, she must think things through. Louis remembered that little Rua used to cry when she was in trouble, but now she doesn't cry. Galt arrived at the estate to find the magical beast lying paralyzed. Not far from this place sat a man who was wanted. He looked crazy. The assistant commander remarked that the interrogation would be better when the man's ability to think returned. Galt decided to find out if there were any other magical creatures that had survived. Rua told Sven all the details. He was sorry that he was not around when the girl found out the whole truth. The prince remarked that the diary entries are very useful, and Rui's mother is a wise woman. Sven shared his guesses about the scientist mentioned in the notes. It could be related to the person Shiji is currently trying to find. He will tell you more when the assistant returns. The prince assured the girl that he would handle the investigation on his own, and she should rest in the meantime. He also suggested that she go for a walk with him, or rather a date. Rua didn't refuse, but she wondered what would happen to their plan if they went on vacation. Sven reminded her that she would go on vacation and he would continue to do community service. The prince added that it will be possible to effectively carry out the plan only when they rest at least a little. But apparently he just wanted to go on a date with a girl. Rua agreed if she was suitable for him as a partner. Sven noted that she fits like no other, and he will take care of the escort later. He looks forward to tomorrow. The prince noted that it is possible to meet ordinary clothes, but for a girl this is precisely the important aspect. Previously, Ari helped in such matters, and now she has Louis and Diana. A maid burst into Rui's room. She apologized because she did not expect that there was someone in the room. Rua detained the girl to ask her opinion. Compared to the other maids who always treated Rui with disdain, Mary was conscientious. Although Rua rarely spoke to her, it was like a breath of fresh air. Rua was always kind. She was despised because of her power defect, but Mary always liked her. However, that day she was also the one who betrayed her. Then when Galt was brought in on the verge of death, Mary peeped into his room. She also saw Rua rush to the man to heal him. The girl did not stay long, as she was afraid that she would not be scolded by the senior maid, so she hurried back. The next day, Mary wanted to visit Rook. When Marie entered the room, she saw the same wounds as Commander Galt. She had heard that when Rua was healed, she took the disease away. The maid was frightened, but understood that she needed to provide first aid and stop the bleeding. But I saw Miss Ari next to Rui, who said that her friend had returned from a night out. Ariana tried to convince the maid that her friend often ran away from the temple and had fun with men, and this time, when Ari was healing Galt, Rua came across a magical beast. Mary knew it was a lie and that Ari was trying to spread it. But the girl could not do anything because the senior maid ordered not to contradict Arya and Nirna. Moreover, such as Mary has no influence in the temple, her word against the words of aristocrats. Therefore, she must silently follow Ari's order. And Miss Torbiaz herself wants to tell everything to the high priest and distort the reality. Where is Rua herself and who framed Galt? However, Mary decided to help with Rui's wounds anyway. But if her wounds disappear, then the evidence that it was she who cured the commander will disappear. Mary is sorry that she can only do this. After that, while Rua was bedridden for a month, Ari's lies spread throughout the temple. But everyone somehow felt that something was wrong. Despite this, everyone pretended not to notice and continued to praise Mrs. Torbius and despise Rue. It was simply smarter, and Mary remained silent. Looking into Rui's eyes, Mary couldn't hold back tears, because she was the one who had to apologize. Even now, it's scary to talk about what happened because it always seems that Ari is watching her. Mary wants to finally stop being afraid and be brave for a good person like Rua. And when she copes with it, she asks the lady to allow her to apologize properly in front of her. Rua apologized for making Sven wait. The man replied that he was pleased to wait for her. Calling Rua a princess, he asked to be allowed to accompany her that day. The girl was surprised because she is not a princess at all, but she was pleased to hear it from his lips. Sven thought out the date plan until late at night. He couldn't sleep for a long time yesterday because he was thinking about the upcoming date with Ruya. The girl's head was also occupied with the death of her parents. She thought about it until dawn. Sven appreciated Rui's outfit, that she was covered up. The girl also complimented Sven that even in a common man's costume, he looks great. However, when Sarid saw his brother in this outfit, he was quite angry. Rua felt Sven take advantage of her gift. The prince noted that the meeting was a great opportunity to get perfumed. In addition, it can have a positive effect in politics. Sven managed to talk to the envoy from the southern country. He paid attention to the scent of perfume and was very impressed by it. Diplomatic negotiations finally broke the deadlock. The couple went to the bakery where Alan and Charlotte worked. Rua couldn't imagine that Sven would bring her here. One day she already wanted to visit here, and maybe the prince found out. Sven deliberately took as an example the custom of the townspeople to eat and walk. The prince wanted to feed the girl properly for a long time. Charlotte also gave him advice on where they would go next. Rua guessed that they were going to the theater. Sven has long wanted to see an opera with the participation of a famous foreign singer. However, the girl accepted that there it is necessary to have a proper appearance. Although he likes the girl's outfit in principle, he asks her to change her clothes one more time. Rua can't imagine a person who would refuse Sven. Suddenly, the couple noticed a boy on the road. He shared that he ate a cookie with berries while his mother was not looking. The boy sneaked out to get medicine because a terrible princess lives in the temple. Rua remembered the stranger, how she had healed him instead of Ari. The berries that the boy ate have a weak poison in their skin, but when combined with herbs, they lose their properties and leave only an aroma. Sven accepts that the girl will hurt herself again, but she assured the prince that she would use the wrong power. Rua added that now the boy would feel hungry. Therefore, the prince gave him bread from the bakery. Suddenly, the boy remembered Rue, that she had already helped him. He promised that he would tell his mother that he had been cured by a real saint. Sven guessed that Rua had used the opposite of healing power. He added that it must be used wisely. Rua noted that this mind was Louis. Rua asked not to laugh at her, but for some reason she seems to know the dress for the opera is too old. Sven objected, saying that the girl looked great and he was lucky to have such a lady to accompany him. The saleswoman in the store turned out to be very nice. She dreamed of meeting the saintly candidate, and she knew that she was recommended by Charlotte from the bakery. The saleswoman admitted that she was also a victim of Viscount Redmond. After that, she avoided men for a while. Thanks to Rui, the girl overcame her fear. After receiving funds from Charlotte, she finally realized her dream, opened a store. She is very pleased that it was Rua who visited him. Sven appeared in his new costume. Rua thought she was used to seeing him in full dress. The seller selected the colors so that the combination is visible when the couple is standing together. She understands that the prince and Rua are not publicizing their relationship yet, but she wanted the couple to be the faces of the store. The candidate was surprised that Sven organized the crew because it was not far to go. Sven noted that without a crew they would only attract unwanted attention. It was recommended by the shop assistant, and she also advised to buy a gift for Shiji. The prince wanted to somehow thank his assistant. One day he gave him a dagger. Answering that he did not deserve it, he put it on the shelf as something valuable. Sven noted that they would not enter the theater through the main entrance because that would only cause a lot of noise. The prince even reserved special seats. Rua was amazed that Sven had booked the lodge on such short notice. The prince noted that he has a principle. You cannot be ashamed to use your power. The opera was called The Help of the Goddess Rush. This is a legend about a lady from the kingdom of Zedo who healed the population from the plague. As a little girl, Rua was very jealous of the goddess. It was because of this opera that the girl wanted to become a saint. In the end, no saint and goddess came out of her. Now she positioned herself as a villain who vowed revenge. The opera was also as beautiful as Rua remembered it. It's been a long time since she's had such pleasure in her life, and it's all thanks to Sven. The prince offered them something to eat because they ate only a bun for lunch. Sven booked the entire floor of the restaurant at the theater. Since this was their first date with Roy, he wanted it to be special. The girl liked everything, because Sven managed to learn all her tastes in a few tea parties. Rua cannot express her gratitude, so the prince offered her to play the piano. At the celebration, Sven was unable to hear her play, but today he booked this place specifically because of the instrument. The girl began to play Ovation in Broad Daylight, the tune that completely describes her. Later, Sven joined with the violin. Rua was pleasantly surprised by the prince's performance. Sven noted that he is not such a master, but he is glad that his cherished dream of playing a duet with her has come true. The sun was already hiding behind the horizon, and the couple had to go back to the store to change clothes. However, Rua did not want to leave the prince. She wanted to spend more time with him. And it seems that Sven sensed it and offered her a walk to another special place. The prince brought the girl to the edge to see a beautiful landscape. They were alone, so Rua could tell everything that was on her mind to Sven, and he would gladly listen. The prince noticed how Rua had changed since she learned the truth about her parents' death. She was physically with him, but mentally she was flying somewhere. He doesn't want her to be quiet. The prince remarked that Rua was very strong. She had a strong core, and no matter how much pain she suffered, she remained the same. He asked not to hide his feelings. The man is sure that if Rua shows weakness, her strength will not waver. After these words, tears came out of Rui's eyes. She could not stand it and threw herself into Sven's arms. Rua hates both the head of the clergy and all his supporters so much that she is ready to kill them with her own hands. And at the same time, she is sad, because her family has done nothing wrong. The girl is tired of this, but she just can't let everything go. Sven noted that Rua could cry as much as she wanted to let out all the emotions, and he would be there for her in the meantime. The girl was upset because while she was crying, it was already dark. Sven saw in this only an opportunity to spend more time with her. The prince also added that crying is not a privilege of children. He too can shed a tear when his brother bends his stick. Thanks to Sven, Rua can finally breathe, as if a mountain has been lifted from her shoulders. When a girl finds herself at the bottom, the man always pulls her up. She even has thoughts that she loves him, but this will only complicate everything. Both Sven and Rui enjoyed their date and hope to meet tomorrow. At this time, Shiji finally returned from his mission. He said that the prince's fears were confirmed. After meeting with the prince, the smile does not leave Rui's face. She managed to both laugh and cry, and this calmed her down. She needs to sleep and come to her senses. Sven had integrity. Its power is unbreakable. Shiji shared that he had conducted an investigation on a little-known person with whom the high priest had been in contact many times in the past. It turned out that the man had been deported a long time ago, and at the same time he was called crazy. This scholar infiltrated back into the country, apparently not without the help of the high priest. Redmond could have had a hand in it, as well as the Marquis of Sven and Rua. Shiji tried to detain the scientist, but he managed to escape. The head of the clergy has teamed up with a scientist and is planning something far more terrifying than just killing people with magical beasts. The details are unknown, but one thing is clear: something large-scale is happening. They even eliminate witnesses who learned about the plans, and their daughter is locked up in the temple to be used for their own purposes. But fortunately, not everyone knows about Rui's power to inflict pain. If the high priest finds out about this, he will try to use RUU in an even more devious way. Sven understands that it is necessary to hide the girl's gift as carefully as possible. If they uncover the high priest's plans and crimes, so will Rui's revenge. Sven is quite determined to punish and send to the scaffold all those who made his goddess suffer. The prince apologized to the assistant for making him work without days off, and as a sign of gratitude gave him gloves from himself and Rui. Shiji appreciated the attention and promised to treat the gift with care. Sven declared that he forbade them to be guarded. He wanted Shiji to wear them. All they had to do was find out how Miss Torbius was involved in the high priest's plan. The archpriest allocated a whole room specially for the scientist. His supporter wondered what was so special about this crazy man that he didn't even tell him his whole plan. The scientist reflected on the fact that soon his experiments, which he enjoyed, would come to an end. He is also anticipating the completion of a plan that will put the country in their hands. Louis was supposed to come pick up Diana's outfits, which she had borrowed for Rui. The girl was eagerly waiting for him. Before leaving, Louis had an argument with someone, so he was delayed. Louis hadn't seen Rue since the day they were at Restado Manor. He couldn't get it out of his head that she was depressed. As a child, when she was upset, the first person who came to help was Luce. But now he sees Rua less lost than she was before. The girl understood that it was thanks to Sven because he was nearby. Rua had a present for Diana and wanted Louis to deliver. But unexpectedly, the lady peeked out from behind, scaring her friends. She was supposed to meet Sarid that day, but it seemed unfair that Louis was going to see Rui himself. Diana had a fight with Sarid and doesn't want him to get on her nerves. The man could not eat at all because of the service, and when the bride said that this would affect his health, he began to hide this fact. Rua wanted to thank the lady for always helping her and give her a gift. Diana noted that she was only repaying the debt to the person who saved her mother. But the lady happily accepted the handkerchief and promised to take care of it. Rua remembered choosing her when she was with Sven. Diana rejoiced because her guess that these two were in a close relationship was confirmed. Diana is looking forward to Sven and Rua getting married, and she and the girl will become a family. Louis reassured Rue that Diana was fond of romances, which are now popular in the kingdom. The lady reported on a rumor, which is spreading in the aristocratic will, that the daughter of Count Torbius will soon be married. As it turned out, a request came to Galt's father. He gave a positive answer, and the preparation has already begun. Galt was angry that his father had decided everything for him. The man declared that there were no doubts, and that this was only a marriage with a bride, whom his son had chosen on his own. The ceremony will take place in a month. The Torbius family is planning to organize a grand celebration. The father strongly advised Galta not to allow himself to be indecent towards the Count's family. The candidates discussed the future wedding of the commander of the knights and Ariana. They are looking forward to it. However, Rua was surprised by such haste. Ariana was the initiator of the wedding, so everyone was worried if there was something behind it. Rua had heard once that the high priest could use Galt's popularity for his own purposes. Rua tried to figure out if they were using the wedding to cement their position, if it was only for Ariana's benefit or if both sides were involved. This is the wedding between her former friend and her first lover. Shiji startled Rue with his sudden appearance. The girl noticed that the assistant was wearing gloves and was happy. Shiji is deeply grateful for their care, but can't believe he deserves a gift from them. The assistant found out about the wedding one of the first and already reported to Sven. The prince told him to watch further events. Shiji wanted to tell Rui everything, but he has another errand. Rua must not use a power that causes pain for a while. They worry that a mad scientist is lurking somewhere nearby. And that's why the girl decided to trust the prince. Shiji said goodbye to Roy because he is going on a mission again. The girl wished him to be careful because if something happens to him, Sven will be very hurt. Ariana was very happy that her family spoiled her and there was no one around, like Rui, who would bore her. The girl was very scrupulous about choosing a dress because everything must be perfect. A wedding with a popular favorite will increase her overall status. Moreover, the high priest's plan will be fulfilled, and as a result there will be no one left to take the place of the saint, except for Ari. Rua asked how Sven's tea was, since she's replacing Shiji and isn't doing so well. The prince assured that the tea was delicious, and he would drink it with her every day. After the date, Rua thinks about Sven too much. She tries to talk herself out of it, so she changes the subject and asks about Ari's wedding. Representatives of the southern islands will be present at the event. Earlier, Sven had talked about diplomatic relations with them, and thanks to Rui's perfume, everything was successful. In that country, a year earlier, the wedding of Ari's older sister, Miss Yumiya, took place. There are no sons in the Torbius family, so a nephew should become the next head. Mrs. Yumiya was married to a native of that country for the sake of diplomatic relations. However, the goal was never achieved, so her figure in a political marriage did not justify itself. At that time, when political marriages were first discussed, none of the aristocrats wanted to give their daughter away. The southern islands, despite their beauty and wealth, are less developed. However, to everyone's surprise, Count Torbius raised his hand. Rua assumed that the family's attitude towards the eldest daughter was completely different, but no one really knew how. Be that as it may, Count Torbius has earned the respect of the aristocrats. At the same time, he used his daughter, which confirms what a treacherous person he is. And now the older sister is going to the younger one's wedding. Who Miss Yumiya really is, they will only be able to find out when they meet her. It would be good if she was not a threat to them. But it may turn out to be the opposite. She will become an ally. However, Miss Yumiya is still Ariana's relative, so you have to be on your guard. Before attending the wedding, the islanders will go to a welcoming event. Yumiya will see them. Rua really hoped that she would not become their enemy. Yumiya sees Zito Kingdom for the first time since she got married. However, she would never want to see her younger sister again. A welcome banquet in honor of the arrival of the islanders will be held in a week. From the kingdom of Zito, there will be the culprits of the holiday, Sven, the royal family, and some representatives of the aristocracy. Rua is also on the guest list, as she is the Rose Princess this year. She has to perform several tunes at the holiday. Although they are lighter than her previous one, she still worries about whether she will have time to prepare. Yumiya tried to find out something about Ari from Diana. Mrs. Hennedy doesn't attend social events. That's all Diana could find out. Yumiya looks like a shadow of Ari's sister, to whom you should try to pay as much attention as possible. Therefore, it creates the image of a closed personality, that even the farewell before leaving for the islands was held quietly. Sarid nervously asked why Rua was interested in Yumiya if she and Sven were up to something again. The girl noticed that the first prince is always biased towards the younger brother. For the sake of the future, Rua would like to earn Sarida's trust. Diana yelled at the groom, saying he was being rude again. Rua, as the Princess of Roses and a guest of the holiday, wants to know more about the others. Diana said that if Sarid did not apologize, she would not speak to him again. Rua hoped that she would have a chance to talk to Yumiya to understand the situation and the strange political marriage. Ari came to Galt with options of dresses for the groom to help her choose. He stated that he was still busy with work, but he also thought this was a good time to talk. Galt thought that Ari was in too much of a hurry with the wedding. He did not even have time to give his consent to Count Torbius. Moreover, he is busy with the affairs of the head of the knightly order. Even if they are already engaged, Galt is sure that the decision to get married should be carefully considered. Arya panicked that Galt did not want her to be his wife. The girl said that the wedding was officially announced and everyone is waiting for the holiday and the hero to get married. Ari offered to arrange a wonderful celebration. The maid complained that she had a lot of work. She hoped that after moving to the capital, she would find a rich husband and no longer have to work. Mary, on the other hand, has a different attitude. She heard talk about the saint and just wanted to serve the temple. The first maid wanted a wedding like Galt and Ariana's. Mary was startled to hear this news. After all, without knowing the truth about Ryu, Galt will marry Miss Ariana. She also has something she needs to do. Sven had business at the royal palace, so he couldn't join. Ariana is acting as usual and Galt doesn't look happy. Rui wondered what was on his mind. To begin with, the girl needs to find out what kind of person Yumiya is. The guests were glad to be here today and to stand on the land of such a great state. Sarid, on the contrary, said that they should thank them for going this way. He promised to provide a warm welcome. Yumiya taught the islanders her native language, so they speak perfectly. Ariana noted that she is very happy to see her sister, and that she looks more cheerful than she could have imagined. The girl was constantly worried about her. She believed that Yumiya was painfully worried that her marriage had failed to improve diplomatic relations. The older sister thanked her for her concern, and noted that Ariana did not seem to have changed. Yumiya decided to save the words of congratulations for the wedding celebration. She's also going to check out her family's house while she's here. Ariana replied that her father and others would be very happy. Sarid decided to intervene and offer the guests to rest because a banquet is planned for the evening. Yumiya's husband is proud of her. He said that she will be the most beautiful at the holiday. The lady replied that he was the only one who would praise such a girl and with such a terrible scar. The man reminded that in their country, scars are not a reason for humiliation. He assumed that it was the same sister of his wife, and that because of this, she immediately remembered the hard times. Yumiya assured her husband that she was calm because he was nearby. There is something she must do to prevent further uncontrolled actions of this girl. After all, Yumiya came to her homeland for this. As Rua had assumed, there is a completely different audience here, different from ordinary people at the celebration in honor of the saint, and therefore mistakes cannot be made. The girl saw Sven, and immediately it became calmer because he will be nearby. The environment admired Rui's game. They saw her as a saint. But Ariana was not happy at all. If she becomes Galt's wife, as the high priest predicted, then only Ari will be the only and unique saint. Rue was showered with admiring glances and ovations. Sven is currently answering the messenger's questions. His Highness Sarid and Lady Diana are also busy with this, but Yumiya was nowhere to be seen. Rua hoped to be able to talk to Ari's sister, but it looks like it will be difficult. Her husband is now in contact with the younger brother of the Marquis of Santa Loa family. The candidate noticed how the ambassador was offered alcohol, but she did not want to drink. She understood that the lady was in trouble and it was better to come to her aid. However, because she lacks experience and given her position, failure to intervene could put both parties at a disadvantage. She decided to turn to Louis. He is serving as a waiter tonight at Madame Diana's orders. Louis walked over to the lady and the man who was fetching her and offered a drink of fruit water, which was appreciated by Miss Peridot herself. Louis noted that Rua is very observant and that she inherited her insight from her mother, but the girl did just that, watched people. The lady that Louis and Rua saved came to say thank you. However, the man attributed all the merits to the Rose Princess because she was the one who asked him to do the favor. The ambassador's country also produces alcohol, and she usually drinks it too, but after a long stay on the ship, she feels sick. Galt remarked that Ari looked very cheerful. He used to think it was cute, but now he thinks she's just happy to be married to him as such. He feels that the girl has a completely different motive. And what kind of marriage can we talk about if the groom has such thoughts in his head? In addition, she saved him when he was in a critical condition. Galt, seeing that Rua was helping the ambassador who had become ill, suddenly remembered how the girl held his hand and tried to bring him back to consciousness. He grabbed Rue's hand and asked her to wait. The girl was more worried about the fact that he wanted to ask something and the pain in her hand. The prince intervened, noting that it looked impolite. Sven and Galt had not had the chance to speak since that evening at the former Viscount Redmond's. The prince decided to congratulate him on his wedding and say that he and Ariana are very suitable for each other. Galt thanked the prince in confusion. Rui wondered what the commander wanted to ask. She was pleased that Sven saw that she was in pain and immediately rushed to help. Even though he was talking to important people, Sven took a break because he was worried about her. He noted that the commander's emotions clouded his mind. And that's why the fangs of the snake stuck into him easily. He feels sorry for Galta, but there is nothing he can do. And Sven's mind is clouded when he remembers that the commander was her first love. Ariana asked her ex-girlfriend what she had been talking about with her fiancé with a sly smile. She was interested because His Highness was also present in the conversation. Rua noticed that Arya had the nerve to ask to congratulate her on her engagement. Miss Torbius remembered that Galt used to like Rui, and it looks like Ari turned him away. Ariana said that her friend should cheer with the same sincerity in the competition for the place of the saint, because then she will first of all get together with Rua. However, Rua will definitely not allow this. The girl promised that she would return all the pain that the high priest and his supporters caused her. Today she spends the night in the royal palace. As a result, it never spoke to Yumiya. After that, Rue shot Yumiya and asked to give her time. After all, she wants to talk to her about something. The lady asked to be secluded, no one heard. Yumiya offered to go to her room, but her husband at the meeting does not want to make it to his arrival. First of all, she thanked the ambassador for his help at the welcoming ceremony. The lady watched and saw Rui's concern all the time, and therefore she came to the conclusion that she can be trusted. If you can't be proud of something, it's the ability to see through a person. Yumiya asked how Rua felt about her sister, if she saw Ari as a saint. This led Rook to a dead end because she does not know what to answer her. Somehow, they have native blood, and it seems that her answer should be acceptable. Rua replied that Ari was not suitable for the role of a saint. In her opinion, she definitely should not become one. Yumiya evaluated all her sister's interlocutors to understand who could be trusted with the information she had. "Madam, I want to stop my sister, such a devil." Galt spends the night in the royal palace, in the guardhouse for members of the knightly order. He was offered to stay with Ari, but he categorically refused. Arya probably didn't care about it, and he would be more comfortable that way. With such an uncertain attitude, it seems really strange to him to get married. Suddenly, Mary the maid looked into the guard room. She was allowed to appear because she expressed a desire to help with work issues on the holiday. The girl asked to be allowed to tell what she had hidden in the temple, the truth about Miss Ariana and Rua. Sven noticed that the representative of the islanders was worried about something. The man replied that even an hour of separation from his wife makes him worry. When Yumiya remembers that she was not able to establish diplomatic relations, she starts to worry a lot. However, this was due to the flood of their country, which brought great losses. As soon as she married her husband, she also began to help with recovery. In their country, Yumiya was received very warmly. Sven assumed that the man was worried about how Yumiya was treated in her home. The prince remarked that they had a very friendly family on the island. The man assured that his day was filled with joy from the moment Yumiya arrived. After all the hardships she had to go through, he only wants to give her happiness. Sven is completely in solidarity with his husband because he also wants only the best for Rui. The prince assumed that the girl was now resting in the room. Yumiya offered Rui to enjoy a cup of tea because their conversation would not be pleasant. The lady admitted that she is actually happy with the marriage and does not forget it for a moment. After all, her native home was like hell. The Torbius family was very rich because the grandfather had acquired a significant financial position in his time. Great hopes were placed on the eldest daughter. She was doomed to the title of saint. The father also showed interest in this title and even financed the temple with large sums. However, Yumiya showed no signs of possessing the gift. The gift appeared in Ariana. Her parents did not believe in her. They planned to send their daughter to the temple with joy and at the same time with sadness. Even then, Yumiya hoped that the attitude towards her would not change. The older daughter was attached, but not as strong as the younger one, until Ariana revealed her devilish essence and directed her sting at Yumiya. One day, Ariana wanted to take away a beloved toy from her sister, which her grandmother had given her before her death. The girl had the love of her parents, the strength of a saint, and the affection of those around her, and Yumiya had only this. Against this background, the sisters quarreled. The older one accidentally hit the younger one. After that, Ariana pushed Yumiya into the fireplace and she got burned. There was no mention of the girl healing her sister. The parents immediately ran to Ariana, who skillfully pretended to be hysterical. Because of Yumiya, she became handicapped. Any matchmaking failed. They got rid of the girl, having made a decision to marry her to a southerner, and she was thrown off track. However, now she lives every day with a smile. When the man saw Yumiya's scar for the first time, his face did not change. He did not sympathize, but simply smiled silently. In his country, scars are valued as proof of life. The night before her wedding, Yumiya went to the temple to pray, but she saw a scene involving Variant and it made her heart sink. Mary told everything to Galt, which shocked her husband. He should take Arya's side because she is his future wife, signs he can't trust her anymore. He must be responsible for his actions. Rua is determined to tell Sven everything. Yumiya said goodbye to the girl and invited her to visit their lands in the future because she and her husband would be happy to see Ruu. Mary also visited Rui to confess that she knew the truth about Galt's healing. But because of the fear of Mrs. Ariana, she had to hide everything. Rua assured the maid that she didn't have to apologize, but on the contrary, she should thank Mary for taking care of her when she was near death and not giving up. Rua understood that keeping such a secret was difficult. Mary announced that she was going to leave the temple and return home to find a job of her choice. Rua assured that the disclosure of the truth would not affect the girl in any way. She also promised that she would talk to the prince so that he would help. Mary appreciated Rui's kindness and was glad that she had decided to take this step after all. Galt dared to plead with Miss Restato, but first he wanted Ariana to confess who had actually healed him. He began to understand that there was no hint of love in Ari's words and actions. All this time he was being led around the finger, and he naively believed. Now Galt can't take it anymore and decided to call off the wedding with Ari. The girl replied that she did not like such jokes. Galt informed Arya that he knew she wasn't the one who healed him. The girl began to manipulate feelings, but he will not allow any more situations where she confuses him. Ari threatened that all preparations for the wedding would be ruined only on his initiative. The Torbius family will not keep this fact quiet, and Galt will not get away with it so easily. The man said that he does not care, even if he is kicked out of his home, or even if he loses his status. He will not marry Ariana. The girl told Galt not to make himself a victim, because he believed her and not Rui. The man agreed that he was blind, but Ariana is simply disgusting to him. The girl got angry and promised that it was not worth it to her. She would make him regret that he had offended. Ari, in fits of hysteria, began to scatter things and went completely crazy. Even if everyone finds out that the wedding is cancelled because of Galt, Ariana's reputation will definitely be ruined. She decided to meet with the high priest to smooth things over. Rua pondered over what she had recently learned. She was sorry that Mary was going, but at the same time she was glad that the girl was able to lighten her burden. Later, Sven joined the girl. He was very sorry to see her. But Rui was embarrassed that they were alone in the castle grounds, so she invited him to go to her room. Sven joked that the girl called her husband to her room when it was deep night outside. The prince put his man under guard so no one would disturb them. Rua told the maid about the situation and asked Sven for a favor. He agreed to provide men to secretly escort Mary until things were settled. The prince added that he would arrange for the girl to work nearby, in a reliable family that he trusts, and no one will know about it. Rua admitted that she would be more relaxed if Sven took care of it. The prince speculated on Galt's next course of action after he found out, but no matter what, it will be beneficial for them. Rua also shared the information that Yumiya told her. That night, in the temple, the scientists took Ariana's blood for an experiment, after the completion of which they will be able to distribute the result throughout the country. Ariana didn't care about people. The main thing was that she became a saint. Yumiya knew for sure that their sister was involved in something that could harm everyone. After what she saw, Yumiya wanted to tell someone, but it was before her wedding, so she couldn't trust anyone. She's been worried about it since she got married. But in the end, she returned to her homeland and found a person to whom she could tell. Now Sven and Rua had an almost complete picture. Shiji is now trying to capture the scientist, but the mission is not an easy one. The man hides skillfully. If difficulties arise, he will return and tell at least what he learned. Sven offered to wait for Shiji and compare what he had with the information from Miss Yumiya. The day Rui's revenge is near. Sven asked Ryu to refrain from using the sadistic ability as it would be their trump card. There should be a ceremony tomorrow, but everything depends on the actions of the commander. A kitten joined the couple, which Shiji fed from time to time. Sven took on the role of benefactor and decided to take care of the animal instead of an assistant. Rua wishes for Shiji to return to the palace as soon as possible, and for all these peaceful moments to become commonplace for them. But she has to take revenge on the wrongdoers. As Sven had assumed, the day began differently, with Galt breaking off the engagement. There was an uproar, and Ariana herself appeared on duty. The high priest remained silent. This situation became a resonant topic for discussion. Society was divided into two camps. Most blamed Galt, but there were those who blamed Ariana. And only thanks to his authority, the commander gradually began to lure the nobles to his side. The Torbius family is angry, and that is why they are creating a lot of rumors. One says that Galt fell in love with another. Instead, Ariana begins to fall to the very bottom. The commander was able to save his reputation. Many aristocrats broke their deal with the Torbius family because of the wedding situation, as most of them sided with Galt. Everyone found out that it was actually Rua who saved the commander. Rua confronted Galt in the garden. The man admitted that his family rejected him. He also decided to leave the post of commander. But his subordinates and the people did not allow him to do so. Galt will hold the position until the end of the national festival, after which he will be replaced by the vice captain. The man decided to start his career as a knight with a clean slate, but in another place. Galt purposely came to apologize to Rui for hurting her. The girl said that she does not regret saving his life. She did it sincerely. Rua said she didn't need a thank you or an apology, and also that Galt should not think about the past, but fulfill his knightly duty to the end. Galt noticed the incredible beauty of Rui, as well as the cold way she looked at him. He understands that they will no longer have the opportunity to talk openly like this. The man realized that no matter what he said or did, it would not atone for his sins. However, if Miss Restato is in trouble, he will always come to her defense. Sven came to the temple to monitor the progress of preparations for the festival. He happened to run into the high priest, who rather warned than warned the prince about the danger. Diana intercepted the Marquis of Saint-Alois to inquire about his family's affairs, for she had heard that there was an illness in their house which had afflicted his son. The man did not speak and quickly left the palace. Already in the carriage, the Marquis was puzzled when he saw the scientist. He came after learning that their plan was falling apart. The man manipulated the Marquis into talking. Rua received a letter from Yumiya, and she immediately wanted to tell her that Ari's status was bursting at the seams. At this time, the kitten that Shiji was taking care of came to the girl again. The Marquis of Saint-Alois begged a mad scientist to cure his son. However, he refused to listen because he came for money so that he would not be sent out of the country again. The Marquis has always sponsored the scientist's experiments in the hope that this will lead to the prosperity of the state. However, he realized late that he was deeply mistaken. Now it was clear that the scientist infected the son of the Marquis, killed the Restato family. However, the villain was still on failed samples. Experiments include risks, and he is ready for them. Shiji found out the whereabouts of the mad scientist. However, as soon as he decided to give everything to His Highness, he disappeared into the alley. When he followed the tracks, he found that they were waiting for him. The scientist hired 5 thugs for a considerable sum to get rid of the witness. But Shiji cannot be taken in such a quantity. He skillfully scattered all attackers. And just when it seemed that Shiji was victorious, one of the attackers cut him with a knife with a poisonous blade. If it's an ordinary poison, then he can handle it, but not when it's an invention of a scientist. There are 2 main festivals in the Zeto kingdom, one in honor of the goddess Rush, and the other in honor of the founding of the kingdom. A considerable amount is allocated to the festival to make the celebration grand. Every year the high priest makes a speech, but this time the minister decided to abandon the idea and Sven supported the idea. Nor does the prince want the church to be fully involved in the festival. After all, if attacks happen again, people will run to the temple. The minister fears how important the role of the church in the kingdom is. However, the high priest will not calmly accept this fact. Due to the recent conflict with his favorite, the reputation of the church has been shaken. And that is why it is necessary to return the respect and love of the people. Louis personally brought Rui an invitation to a tea party from Diana. The girl saw no reason to refuse it. She was also glad to see Louis. Rua asked a friend for advice on caring for a kitten. Louis said he would try to find records that might contain the information he needed. This is Rui's second visit to Diana's family property, and she is still delighted with the house. Louis went shopping, so the girls will spend the day alone. However, Rua did not expect that Minister Santua would come to Diana. However, the lady assured that there is nothing special here, because preparations for the festival are in full swing. Then Diana admitted that her family is patron of the minister. Ridziel comes from a lower estate and would not be able to reach the heights at such an age. But despite this, the current prime minister noticed him and made him his successor. In addition, he was supported by the ducal family, so Ridziel found himself in this position. Currently, the minister went to a meeting with the high priest to limit the church's participation in the festival. Rua understands that it will be humiliating for the head of the clergy. But now the girl is most worried about the scientist and whether Shiji found him. Diana moved Rook to the balcony, so there will be a tea party. The high priest considers the refusal to speak as an insult to the church. Ridziel is convinced that the church should not pull the whole blanket over itself and have more influence than the royal family. Last year, the head of the clergy took all the attention to himself, so this year, the royal family cannot allow that to happen, although he hopes for further cooperation. When the scientist completes the product, they will have achieved their goal, but they will not be able to do anything if they are forbidden to participate in the celebration. The high priest plans to recreate the legend with the goddess Rush, but in real time. Together with the scientist, they will create poison, infect people, and then cure them. People, as in the case of the goddess, will believe and place the high priest in the role of a deity. And that is why the man chose a selfish person for the role of a saint. The high priest personally created a virgin from Ariana in order to elevate her to the status of a goddess. By manipulating it, he will rule the country, and no one will stand in his way. Rua is sure that Sarid is not happy about her visit and is suspicious of her. Diana indignantly declared that the girl should not talk nonsense, because her fiancé behaves like a rolling pin in the ass for a reason. The first prince was very pretentious by nature, and in the future the king must be careful. And Rua and Sven, on the contrary, planned very bad things. Sarid is especially wary of Diana because of their shared past. She first met him 10 years ago. Her father came to the palace to resolve some work issues. He introduced Sarid to Diana as a future groom. Her first impression of him was not the best, which is why she wanted to know more about him. Before becoming a man their wife, Diana wanted to be friends with Sarid. At that time, the boy, as the heir to the throne, spent days and nights studying. His younger brother Sven was constantly shunned by his peers, and how much he was an unwanted child. One day, Diana kept him company in the garden. It seemed to Diana that Sarid did not want to spend time with her, and that he was not one of those people who easily opens up to others. Sven, on the other hand, believed that his brother had fallen head over heels in love with her. The boy understood Sarid's feelings because he himself met his goddess these days, but to meet her, he must become stronger. Sven has changed a lot since then. No one looked down on him anymore, and despite this, the brothers never got close. And Diana's relationship with Sarid left much to be desired. But many in the palace gossiped that Sven had changed and could become the future king. This is how the factions of the first and second princes were born, but no one was going to deprive Sarid of the throne. But the principle was supported by Peridot's family, and the nobles from the second faction believed that if Sven was put on the throne, it would surely return to them 100-fold. The struggle for power in the royal palace began. Sven had experienced more horror than Rua could have imagined. The aristocrats tried to convince him to fight for the right to the crown. Some even sent their daughters away, made him dizzy, but he avoided any attacks with a smile on his face. However, the faction had a very intrusive aristocrat. He wanted to make Sven king with all his might, and for that he had to get rid of Sarid by breaking him. And Diana became the main target. They tried to kill her by adding poison to her tea. The executor was the daughter of one of the aristocrats, a shy, good-natured girl with whom Diana was friends. Diana was always worried about the fact that Sarid works constantly and does not even find time to eat. He was pleased with her concern, but he had to continue studying in order not to lose to Sven. Sarid suspected that girl because of her relationship with Diana, as well as because of her parents. But he could not catch her in a lie without evidence, without hurting his fiancée's feelings. The first prince regrets his mistake, which he could have prevented, and from that time he became very picky about his beloved surroundings. Diana lay down because of the poison. However, yesterday in a few days the performer could not cope with the burden of guilt and confessed to the crime. She said that her father had made her do this. The goal was not to kill Diana, but rather to scare her. Therefore, the amount of poison was minimal. But even after neutralization, the girl lay with a fever for 3 days. After waking up, the first thing Diana saw was Sarid's face, full of despair and pity. The boy begged to forgive him for not shielding her from danger. Sarid compared himself to his brother, as if he were better than him, then this would not happen. When the boy barely held back tears, Diana realized that she was wrong about him. Sarid turned out to be caring and at the same time unable to fully show his feelings. Diana vowed not to leave the boy again and go all the way with him. Louis once again distinguished himself by his clumsiness. Diana brought up a very difficult topic, but as soon as he appeared, the lady immediately felt better. He seems to create comfort with his presence. Louis bought all the things cats like and learned all about cat care. Rua was glad that the man had done so much for her simple request. Sarid could not forgive those who harmed his bride. Not only the family was involved in the poisoning, but other representatives of the faction suffered at his hands. Sven also did not stand aside, but helped his brother destroy the second faction. Despite their complicated relationship, they united against the betrayal of a common goal. This incident demonstrated to the people all the power and influence of the first prince. Sarid still can't forgive himself and let go of the past, especially if the person trying to get close to Diana is related to Sven. Diana is quarreling with her fiancé, but you are sure that she knows how to choose whom to communicate with and trusts them completely. Rua also hopes that one day the prince will accept her. The high priest is convinced that the minister's behavior is unacceptable and that he poses a threat to their plans. If you get rid of his patron, then the situation will shake. The scientist admires his new laboratory, and there he managed to convince the Marquis Saint-Eloi to continue sponsoring his experiments. In addition, he managed to catch a rat that was snooping after him. The priest came to the scientist on the order of the high priest. He wanted to take the prototype that was prepared especially for Miss Torbiaz. It was still under development. Since he was engaged in this, he made several discoveries. A poison that causes sudden death, a substance that slowly drains a person's life force. The priest wanted to obtain a substance that would lead to the condition of the son of the Marquis of Saint-Eloi. The scientist warned to be careful with the bottle because you can become a victim of poison. The scientist admitted that he is abnormal because everything is normal in the whole world, boring and monotonous. He can't wait for his discoveries to turn the world upside down. Despite the attempt on Diana's life, she grew up to be a cheerful and strong woman. Rua was once again convinced that she was worthy to become their queen. At the tea party, the girl also learned about Sarid's difficult life. He has long been in love with Diana and had a bad relationship with his younger brother. But she definitely didn't expect Sven to be shunned as a child. Now she wants to be by his side and help him cope with everything that has fallen on him. Sven immediately arrived at Rui's as he had an emergency. There was no way he could contact Shiji. Now he can safely be considered missing. The prince assumed that he was a scientist by experience and therefore he was ready for persecution. Sven was convinced that Shiji would handle the mission perfectly, but it seems they underestimated the enemy. The prince ordered the search to begin, and he himself will join them tomorrow. Rua persistently pleaded with him. However, Sven doesn't want her to get hurt. The girl convinced the prince with her ability to heal and, in case of something, the ability to defend herself with her sadistic ability. After that, Sven agreed to her terms. The prince did not want to get involved in dangerous adventures, but Shiji always was like that. He put his life below others, and this always worried Sven. Once his assistant got into a fight and was badly hurt. He followed the trail of the spy and caught him in the garden. However, he underestimated the enemy and got a natural result. Shiji is one of the few that Sven trusts, and therefore if he gets hurt, it will be very difficult. The deep devotion of the assistant for the prince is to some extent a minus. Searches continued, but were not successful, until a passerby learned that they were looking for a missing man. He gave the glove to Shiji and asked him to follow him. Sven treated the stranger with suspicion because he believed that a scientist might be behind him. The man owns a small pharmacy and was a former student of Rosina Savan. That was the mad scientist's real name. Rua could not understand why the man was so openly admitting his relationship with the scientist. Lynn Pardis assured that he is a former student. They worked together before Rosen Savan was deported and for a while after. However, now they are no longer associated with him. As a former student, he also understands how dangerous this person is, and that's why he decided to go against him and renounce his ideals. Sven noted that it is not very similar to a trap. Lynn Pardis found Shiji in the alley, and when he tried to pick him up, the assistant almost passed out, and that's why the man decided to take the stranger to himself. His teacher has a whole system of secret passages throughout the city, so that's probably why Shiji fell into his trap. The scientist was able to escape using this passage. The poison used to injure Sidisi is deadly. Lynn Pardis could not figure out how to neutralize the poison, but he tried to slow down the spread. The man walked Sven and Rua to Shiji so they could say goodbye to him. Rua was summoned to heal the assistant. However, according to the leagues, the candidate's ability is weak here. Before the teacher was banished, he researched the healing powers of holy forces. Then they received the support of the nobles. But everything started to get out of control. Rosina Savan tried to create drugs, poison, with which the power of the saint could not cope. If the student's analysis is correct, then the poison can be neutralized. The poison of the magical beasts is needed, but it is not so easy to get it. Rua often treated victims of the creatures, and she had to learn the symptoms. Lynn Pardis has monster records. They describe the characteristics, symptoms of poisoning, and where and when a particular type appeared in the kingdom, and also a way to neutralize the effects of various types of poison. Rua is sure that her sadistic ability will help save Shiji, and luckily she succeeded. Her husband came to his senses and did not understand where he was. Shiji immediately started apologizing for not being able to handle the assignment. Instead, he noted that there is no such subordinate whom he can trust as much as he does. Lynn Pardis thought if a scientist found out about Rui's powers, she would make a great experimental experiment. He warned to be careful with him. After all, there is not a single gram of humanness in Rosen. All he cares about is his ambitions. Sven, knowing how strong his bond with the high priest was, offered the student to unite. Lynn Pardis agreed to help, but before talking about the teacher, he decided to share his story. He comes from a simple farmer's family. I dreamed of working as a pharmacist. But in his regions, it was labor power that was valued, and Lin was born into a poor family, so he was considered a tukti. He survived, made healing ointment, and occasionally sold to a merchant. That's how the teacher found him. It turned out that Lin's ointment was not popular among aristocrats. Rosen offered the boy to become his student and help him unlock his potential. The teacher treated Lin well, but he had no idea how crazy he really was, and all after he began to cooperate with the high priest. Rosen's insanity began to progress, and every day he was less and less like himself. He became a monster after killing one family. Lin witnessed Rosen sharing the results of his experiment. He wanted the family to die gradually, but it was sudden. But in this case, Rua could not heal them. The archpriest noted that the black rose disease is still far from ideal. Rosen asked what they would do with the girl, as he wanted to use her in his experiments. The head of the clergy refused, because he already has plans for her. Rua is a talented healer who could cover up such ineptitude as Ariana and serve as a great tool for her. Although Lin owed everything to his teacher, he promised to expose all his crimes so that he would be brought to justice. Due to Rosen's whims, his student remained alive. The man found out that the family his teacher killed was Rui. He apologized for not being able to stop him and asked how Lin could make amends to her. Rua stated that it would be better to take action and stop the teacher. Then she can take her revenge. Sven noticed that Rua was a very strong girl. It was important to the high priest that the disease of the Black Rose contained Ariana's blood so that only she could cure it. Their plan is to create an epidemic and sow panic. Then people will elevate Mrs. Torbius to the goddess, so she will receive the status of the only saint. It will create an artificial belief in its powers, just as it once did with magical beasts. However, it is much more tragic here. After all, the high priest will literally decide who lives and who doesn't. He can force people to serve him, or get rid of those he does not need. But what scared Rue the most was that Ariana knew about this plan from the very beginning, and everything suited her. Lynn Pardis was adamant that they had to stop them all, and he would do anything to do so. The first person they decided to get rid of was a scientist. Sven wondered why the high priest had chosen Ariana for his plan. Mr. Torbias financed the temple more than once, but if in fact only the blood of the girl was suitable. Shiji was upset that he lost Sven and Rui's gift. However, they reassured him, saying that the glove was found, although it was cut. Despite this, it can be sewn. The assistant was ready to regret the loss for the rest of his life. He thinks he's let Rua and Sven down once before, and Tom doesn't want to do it again. Rua asked Lin what he meant when he talked about her sadistic ability. He noted that she reminded him of the goddess Rush. When he was small, he often rummaged through the village documents. According to them, Rush was born in their village more than 100 years ago, but one of the ancestors decided to preserve her memories. In one of the documents, it was noted that Rush knocked down the bear with one touch. Lin noted that the lyrics take on a completely different meaning if you consider that the goddess Rush and Rui have the same powers. Sven wouldn't even be surprised if the girl is the reincarnation of Rush. Rua wants to clarify everything once and for all. Since Rosen killed her entire family, she will never forgive him, and only death will wash away all his sins. Therefore, he wants to know if Lin agrees to this. His teacher has committed many crimes, and Lin, as a student, must bring him to justice. At that time, the final part of preparations for the festival was taking place in the kingdom. Every year at the festival, aristocrats working on common causes exchange gifts with each other. Since Diana is the main organizer of the holiday, she has the most gifts. The butler emphasized that they should not lose their vigilance and check everything that comes for Miss Peridot. After all, in her childhood she was poisoned by the daughter of an aristocrat. Louis, ready to help with the inspection, unexpectedly got into trouble when an angry chef jumped out of the kitchen and, grabbing him, began to drag him. The maid noticed a gift from Marquis Saint-Eloi, a basket of roses, among which one was black. The girl did not attach much importance to this because she believed that Diana and the Marquis were on good terms. Sven from Rua rode in the carriage and discussed today. The girl noticed that the prince was very tired. He asked to sit near Rui, then rested his head on her shoulder. He was really tired, and that made him feel miserable. Sven confessed this to Rui for the first time. The role of the ideal prince exhausts even him. Rua reminded him again that he could rely on her. If you don't look at Sven's status, he is an ordinary person who is no stranger to weakness. The girl still can't calm her heart next to him. Suddenly she noticed a bench that reminded her of walks with her mother and how she once healed a boy. Rua shared that at that time she had the impression that the boy was about to disappear, because in addition to physical pain, he had mental pain. Remembering this, she thinks that the boy faced many difficulties. The girl hopes that the stranger got home unharmed. Sven realized that Rua also remembered everything and assured her that everything was fine with the boy because she had helped him. As Sven had promised on the night of his birthday, he would tell Rui everything. Even when her revenge is fulfilled, the prince hopes to be able to stay with the girl. As Sarid expected, his father wants to establish relations with other countries. As for the festival, the first prince and Peridot's family are responsible for it. The high priest had no intention of giving up so easily, but the minister assured Sarid that he would deal with it. The man asked the prince about the invited guests for the welcome ceremony. They were usually representatives of stately families among aristocrats. After all, the presence at such a holiday shows their status. The problem now lies with the Torbius family. They used to be on the guest list, but given that their status has dropped significantly, Sarid thinks it's best not to invite them. The minister offered his help to the prince in choosing a gift for Diana. Sarid noted that he gave a book last year and plans to give a handkerchief this year. However, the minister noted that Diana really appreciates gifts from friends and recently received a handkerchief. This led the prince to a dead end. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. He is sure that the younger brother would choose a gift without much effort. And Sarid does not know what will please Diana. Mr. Torbias was furious that their family would not be present at the festival's opening ceremony this year. Their family also suffered losses. Ari began to be scorned because of the break-off of the engagement. Yumiya refused financial support because she wants nothing to do with the family. Parents hope that at least Ari will not let them down. Ari, hearing the conversation, assured her parents not to worry because she is the high priest's favorite and will fix everything. They are not aware of the Black Rose plan, and their daughter does not want to involve them in it. The festival is Galt's last mission as commander. He should draw up a patrol plan for that time. But first of all, you have to find out what magical creatures are nearby. Doing his knightly duty is how Galt can redeem himself to Arya. The girl, in turn, wants to stop the high priest and his supporters from applying the disease Black Rose. Louis ran to Rui in a panic to tell her that Diana wasn't waking up. It all started with servants checking gifts from aristocrats. Diana noticed the bouquet and assumed it was from Prince Sarid. However, she was somewhat upset when she learned that His Highness had not yet sent her a gift. She knew that Sarid was very serious about choosing gifts. The servant offered Diana to make tea while she looked at everything the aristocrats had sent her. Returning with the tea, the maid found the lady unconscious. Louis, who rushed to the screams, smelled the scent of roses in the air. After examining Diana's body, he noticed a mark in the form of a rose. Rua tried not to panic because the situation with Diana is not similar to the one that happened with her parents. After all, the lady was still alive, but suddenly the final sample of the disease was applied to her. However, the girl could not understand why Diana became the target of the high priest. The staff sounded the alarm and wanted to go to the church, but Louis stopped them in time. When the man told Diana's grandmother that he would find Rua and bring her to the estate, only then did she agree not to contact the high priest. And this means that the family trusts her more than the church. Sven received the secret message and rushed to see Miss Peridot as well. From the outside, it looks as if Diana is just sleeping. Sarid, having also received news about his bride, flew into the room in a panic. Sven assured his brother that it was nothing like a common cold or poison. Sarid frantically demanded to explain what happened to Diana and how to wake her up. The second prince tried to convince Sarid to trust him and Rui, since it was likely that the church was involved. The candidate declared that she would do anything to save her friend. Then Sarid realized that Diana had given that scarf to Diana. After that, the first prince decided to confide in his brother and Rui and return to the important meeting he had to leave. Sven assumed that Diana was poisoned because she is the patron of the future prime minister. The current minister plans to reduce the influence of the church. Accordingly, it is not profitable for the high priest. If Diana is sent into a coma or even killed, then Peridot's family will no longer be able to support the minister. The main goal is to save Diana, but they do not know what kind of disease she was infected with. It can be both a completed formula and a prototype. The Marquis of Saint-Eloi had arrived to see Madame Peridot, which Sven found very suspicious. Sometime before that, the Marquis found out that the church had sent Diana a bouquet on his behalf. Saint-Eloi worried about the lady because she was always kind to him and interested in his son's health. The archpriest assured that no evidence would remain and would not harm the reputation. The head of the clergy insisted that Saint-Eloi do everything as he was told, and then his son would be helped to come to his senses. The man realized that he was made a participant in the same evil. The Marquis of Saint-Eloi waited in a panic for someone from Peridot's family to meet him. Sven and Rua came out to inform about the situation with Diana. The prince noticed that Miss Peridot was lying unconscious, and he and the Marquis would wait for her to wake up. There was a black flower mark on Diana's body, and Sven wondered if the Marquis knew anything about it. His Highness assumed that the same disease had broken Saint-Eloi's son. Marcus admitted that the boy also has a mark in the form of a black rose. Here the man was caught on the fact that he was an ally of the high priest, because Sven did not say that this was exactly the mark of the rose. Rua ordered Saint-Eloi to confess everything. Sven added that whatever happened to the Marquis, his family, and his son depended on his telling the truth. He asked for a wise decision. The Marquis fell to his knees and begged to save his son. He fell into the hands of the devil himself. As a representative of the aristocracy, he sponsored medical research. Saint-Eloi also sponsored the scientist, although he seemed strange to him. To control Marquis Rosen and the high priest poisoned his son with the prototype of the disease. Because of this prototype, a person falls into a coma, and not just dies like one noble family. Then the Marquis learned that the death of the Restato family was the work of a scientist and a high priest. Saint-Eloi's son was practically taken hostage, and the Marquis had no choice but to obey. The main thing is that the final version of the drug was not used on Diana. The disease can be cured only with the healing power of Ari. However, this ailment did not affect others in contact with the infected. Sven suggested that with Lin, they could cure them. The prince assured that he would help save the son of the Marquis if he promised to accuse the church of crimes. By this time, all indisputable evidence will be in hand. Let faith in the clergy weaken, but not be completely undermined. And the words of such a respected person as the Marquis of Saint-Eloi can change everything, and he must do it at the festival. Sven noted that although the man was blackmailed, he is still an accomplice to the crimes. However, when the people hear the story of the Marquis, they will feel sorry for him and soften the sentence. Marquis Sandor Saint-Eloi is ready to accept these conditions if his son wakes up. He will accept the punishment with his head held high, like one of the honorable representatives of the aristocracy. Sven decided to send his men disguised as servants to the Marquis's estate. In this way, church representatives will not be able to put too much pressure on him. Now it seems to Sandor that he will finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Rua noticed that another person had become a victim of the crimes of the clergy. The Marquis sympathized with the girl that her parents had died. He managed to meet her dad several times, and he remembered that the man was a good family man. Rua was never able to visit the family's graves. Many happy moments remained in her memory, but she was never able to say goodbye. Sven offered to visit them together when it was all over. They will tell how their daughter worked all this time. The prince is sure that her parents will be proud of her. His Highness also invited the girl to the opening of the festival. Ruu was puzzled by this, because there will be representatives from the higher aristocracy, and she has nothing to do there. Sven assured Ruu that he would arrange everything with his brother. He had even prepared an outfit for her. But first they need to save Diana and the Marquis's son. The prince has already sent all the components to Lynn. It remains to wait for a response. Rua hopes that her strength will still be able to cope with the disease. When the girl received the results from Lynn, she realized that she would not be able to save Diana. After all, the prototype contains a large amount of various types of poison of magical creatures. The victim of one of them came to the temple, but Rua did not heal him, as she was at that time on a mission in another temple. Therefore, her sadistic ability cannot handle it. Sven asked the girl to calm down because even under such circumstances, they have a chance. If she needs poison, they will collect it personally. Monsters are still rampaging in the outskirts. Before retiring, the current commander set himself the goal of dealing with them. The monster they needed was locked up at the old training ground. Sven does not need extra attention, so he refused to help the knights. After all, any careless decision and information can get to the high priest. Rua offered to go and figure it out together. It sounded pretty ruthless of her. Sven warned that if it got too dangerous, he would risk his life for her. Lin and Shiji were worried about His Highness and Ru, but as long as they are close to each other, they can do anything. Their relationship is built on mutual trust. Lin would also like to build such a relationship with the teacher, and maybe then fate would have turned out differently. But still, he has good news. He found Rosen's shelter. Although the monster is asleep, the report states that it is particularly sensitive to sounds and smells, and he'll probably wake up when Sven and Rua get closer. If this happens, Rua will be able to use her sadistic ability, which is most effective against monsters. Sven immediately remembers the former Viscount Redmond. Sven is fascinated by the girl's bravery. Instead, Rua noted that she is still ashamed of her actions. Then they decided to destroy the monster by joining forces. The prince noticed that the scales were too strong, and therefore the knights could not kill the beast. Rua, watching how Sven fought, became worried. She is forced to help the prince and hit the monster in the blind spot. The girl failed, but it did not compare to the pain she had experienced before. Rua remembered that she had brought a herbal powder that could stop the blood, and it also has a striking smell, so she threw it in the direction of the monster. After that, Sven struck the creature in the tail with his sword, and Rua caused him a devastating dizziness. Now the monster will not harm anyone, and they will save Diana. The girl turned up her leg, and Sven decided to take her in his arms. He noticed that she is constantly careless about herself and does not allow herself to be taken care of. Sarid was worried if the medicine would work. Sven assured him that a trusted pharmacist had been consulted beforehand. Besides, Rua risked her life to get all the components. A miracle happened. Diana woke up. Sarid could not contain his joy and hugged the bride. Sven and Rua were glad that they kept their promise and were able to save the girl. This situation with Diana reminded Sarid of the past. He put her in danger again. However, Miss Peridot once again voiced that no matter what happens, she will not give him peace and will always be by his side. The prince waited until the bride regained consciousness to hand over the gift in person. He always doubts his choice when it comes to Diana, so he says if she doesn't like it, she can throw the brooch away. The lady hit the bridegroom on the head and noted that he is supposedly intelligent, but says absurd things. A gift from Sarid himself is like a treasure. Sarid came to Rui to thank him for rescuing Diana and to apologize for treating the girl disrespectfully. He is very glad that his bride has such a good woman who is ready to do anything for her. The first prince wanted to know what Sven knew about the plans of the church, to which the brother replied that he would tell when the time came. Now they are preparing a secret provocation. Excessive noise can only hinder their plans. Sarid assured that he wanted to help because the high priest reached out to the future queen of this country. Rua noticed that Sven and Sarid had been gone for a long time and assumed that Sven had decided to tell everything to his brother. Be that as it may, the girl is very glad that Diana has come to her senses, and therefore the son of the Marquis of Saint-Alois is too. Louis came to tell the girl that now the princes are in the meeting room with Shiji. If the assistant has returned, it means that they know the whereabouts of the mad scientist. Louis realized something and wanted to share his guesses with Sven, but changed his mind and told Rui. The Marquis of Saint-Eloi is guilty of infecting Diana with the Black Rose. The man once again spoke to the maid who was inspecting the gifts. She remembered a bouquet with a beautiful black rose. But it was when Diana passed out that Louis remembered something. When Rui's parents were found, petals were scattered everywhere. However, when you touch them, they immediately fall apart. After infection with the black rose, the flower completely turns into dust. That is why no one could find evidence in the investigation of the death of the Restado family. Louis cherished all his family members and was grateful that they accepted him. And just like Rua, the man wants the criminal who killed her family to suffer severe punishment for this sin. The lady noted that the fact that he supports her is enough for her. Sven wondered what Rua was doing alone with the apple tree. Louis began to tremble with fear and assured that it was nothing. Rua is glad that Shiji came back unharmed. Meanwhile, Sarid returned to the palace after talking with his brother, and right now, Lin is expecting them for a strategic meeting. Sven invited Rui to go with them. Lin assured that there can be no mistake and the main base of the teacher is in the house behind the forest. The man learned this in such a short period of time thanks to Shiji's achievements in tracking. Leaning on his memories as well, Lin roughly understood where Rosen might be hiding. Moreover, he used to live in this house together with a teacher. Sven noted that their enemy is intelligent and cunning, so he believes that Rosen will eventually change locations, and they need to catch the scientist by surprise with an attack. Rua was surprised and asked what kind of attack. Sven explained that he would not let Rosen Savannah escape. The final is close, and tonight the first step will be theirs. Lin looked at the cup that reminded him of his teacher. At that time, Rua came in and said that they were already leaving. There was a lot of security around the scientist's house. Given that the Black Rose plan is nearing completion, it is not surprising that the enemy will want to play it safe once again. There was only one entrance, so they had to get rid of the guards first. Shiji assured him to trust him as he didn't want any of these scumbags to hurt his highness. While Sven and Shiji cause a ruckus, Lin and Rua will go inside. Although the scientist has nowhere to run, they must attack him as soon as they see him. Rosen Sawan killed all of Rui's family, so she won't let him escape. Sven happily stated that they were ready for their surprise attack. One of the guards remarked that this one was no different from the others. He was interested in what this strange scientist does. Another guard stated that it was none of their business, and they should do their job. As soon as he wanted to say that they would live longer, a knife flew into his throat. Another man sounded the alarm that they had been attacked. Sven commented that the guard is very weak in martial arts. Seiji begged his highness not to come any closer. The prince was not injured because he has an excellent bodyguard who skillfully performs his duties. They haven't finished the mission yet, so it's too early to relax. Sven signaled Rui and Lin to run into the house. The guard stood in the way of the girl, but Sven quickly drew his attention to himself. The door was closed, but this did not stop Lin, and he smashed it with an axe. The scientist noticed that the student had changed a lot, became even tougher than before. Rosen knew that only Lin could catch him. Lin woke up the teacher with a cup of coffee. He had already asked him not to stay up so late on research. Rosen was indignant that the student had a sore throat since the morning. Lin was indignant that the teacher did not try the vegetable stew that he had prepared for dinner and insisted that he eat. Rosen refused because he is not interested in life. All a man needs is research. Rosen is sure that there are few talented people who understand in society, but he hopes that Lin at least understands him. The longer a man lives, the more his environment resembles laboratory rats. Food, sleep, and other needs are unimportant to him. Research is what makes him live another day. Although recently, research concerning the saints has come to a dead end. Rosen is endlessly bored sitting behind them, and he doesn't know what to do. Lin remarked, if that's why he's so boring, he'd better take care of his student. He wondered if Rosenu also looked like a lab animal. Rosen replied that the boy should not invent anything like that because he only drinks his coffee with pleasure. The cup from which the teacher drank was the only thing that Lin took with him when he left this place. He did not want to lose the only bright memory of his teacher. But this time Lin will put the past behind her and be the one to stop Rosen. The teacher remarked that a worthless student could not do such a thing. Rua added that today the Black Rose disease will come to an end. Rosen remembered the girl who was the only survivor among her family. He asked to remember the name of those experimental animals. These words angered Rua quite a bit, but she didn't want her anger to rule her. After all, Rosen is only waiting to relax his vigilance, and he will not get such luxury. Lin noted that his teacher has not changed and still considers everyone to be a test rat, but he was convinced, as long as he lived with Rosen, that there was a drop of consciousness in his head. The boy angrily asked why the teacher contacted the high priest. Rosen replied that he was simply bored, and this experiment will shock their whole country. The high priest could easily settle in everyone's soul. He did the same with Ruo. She remembered how the man sympathized with the death of her parents and reassured the girl that she could always rely on him. It was Rosen's research that claimed the lives of her entire family, but the high priest was the one who started it all. Lin wondered why the teacher was so calm. Was he up to something? Here, another hired killer attacks from another room and almost injures Lin. Rui had no choice, so she used force. The attacker suddenly had a headache. He lost control of the situation for a moment, but managed to spray the suspicious perfume. However, in order to save Lin, Rui's abilities need a little more time to activate. Rosen reminded the student that he developed this neurotoxin at an early age. They don't die from it immediately. Gradually, a person stops feeling the limbs. If you don't provide first aid, you won't even be able to breathe. Neurotoxin was the first poison that Lin attempted to recreate as Rosen's apprentice. The scientist remarked that he was a talentless student, since he was never able to reproduce the poison, and cried because of how complicated the formula was. Rosen added that until his death, Lin was never able to match his teacher. The scientist was planning to get rid of the student and take Rua as a hostage, but he was captivated by the performance she put on a moment ago. Rua was worried because Rosen couldn't understand what kind of power she used. More important is how she can save Lin's life. The scientist became very interested. He suddenly wanted to get to know the girl better. Shiji noted that they were not fighting ordinary mercenaries. Even His Highness was not happy. In the end, Shiji was able to defeat the attacker and went to help Sven. Finally, the wounded man threw a knife into Shiji's back. However, he reacted in time and repelled the knife. The weapon was once again imbued with the scientist's deadly poison, and the second time this trick will not succeed. Shiji and His Highness did a great job with all the assassins. They noted that neither Rui nor Lin had been seen for a long time. Sven offered to check how they were. Rua understood that she just needed to get out of the scientist's hands. He noticed that the girl had just caused the mercenary pain with just her touch. He wondered what kind of power she used. The scientist knew that this was not healing, but something completely different. Rua barely touched the man and caused the worst kind of pain possible, but Rosen quickly rebuked her. The scientist was happy because when the research came to an end, he no longer hoped to find a new toy. Rosen wants to explore every part of the girl's body. Suddenly, with his last breath, Lin stabbed the teacher in the leg, after which, taking all his will into his fist, he pounced on him. Lin will not allow him to be called a talentless student. After Lin left the teacher, he studied not only the black rose disease, but also every poison that Rosen had ever created and tested on himself every day. You can't count how many times the guy was on the verge of death, but he continued to do it. Rosen laughed in the student's face, calling him as crazy as himself. The teacher took back his words, saying that Lin had surpassed him. Sven and Shiji arrived and witnessed an interesting picture. Rua noted that she is alive thanks to Lin, and it looks like victory is theirs. Rosen could not move his leg. Lin punched him with all his might. He was sorry that he wouldn't be able to research Rui's powers. There is only one thing left for him, to leave life on his own terms. This prank stunned everyone. Lin does not know what kind of poison it is, and it will take time to analyze it. Rua thought she could deoxidize with the force. Sven blocked the passage of the girl so that she could not do this. Rosen was glad that the poison was fast-acting and he would really die that way. After all, it is better for him to be the first to leave the losing party than to sit and watch it until the very end. The teacher once again stated that Lin was able to surpass him, and as a reward, he would tell him something. Rosen also finally understood what death was. Lin knew that neither his own nor another's life was worth anything to the teacher. Rua emphasized that Rosen is a broken person. He had many chances to get rid of Lin, but he didn't take any of them, and the dose of neurotoxin was low enough, as if he didn't want the student to die. And in the end, when Rosen was cornered, he used the poison on himself instead of Lena. The scientist was never able to kill his only student. All this time, Lin supported this man's humanity. Rua will never forgive the scientist, but that doesn't mean Lin can't mourn his death. And he just wanted the teacher to taste his coffee again. Shiji showed the box that contained all the research on black rose disease and evidence of the church's involvement in its development. the high priest is also cornered, and now the disease will not spread. Rua doubted this because she remembered how the scientist had said that the research had come to an end. Did he mean black rose disease? At this time, Ari was triumphant. She was waiting for the festival and hoped that Rui would like it. The scientist's last words were, "A black rose was offered to the goddess. Think about the meaning of these words yourself." Sven noted that after the words about the end of the study, only one hypothesis comes to mind. And if he is right, then they are in serious trouble. The prince added that it is worth getting out of here because they have all the evidence in their hands, and he offered to talk about it in more detail in the royal palace. Sven invited to his room to continue the conversation. He asked the servants not to disturb so no one would disturb them. Lin was glad that he was in the palace first, and even more so in the prince's chambers. Although Rua was in Sven's chambers for the first time as well, His Highness believes that the disease of the Black Rose was completed even before their attack. But they never found the final prototype in the scientist's house. The worst-case scenario is that the high priest may already have the prototype. Sven ordered to watch him, and during all this time, he never came into contact with the scientist. If Lin had been in the teacher's place, he would not have immediately given the completed creation into the hands of the high priest. Before handing over the finished product to the customer, I would like to agree on more favorable terms. Shiji supported Lin. He believes that the scientist hid the final prototype before direct negotiations began. Even if the high priest knows about the completion of the poison, he most likely has no idea where it might be hidden. And where it is now, Lin was told by the teacher. Sven added that while they are preparing for the festival, they will be looking for a place based on the tip. Shiji stated that he would look for a hiding place. Lin was also called to help as before. Sven appreciates everyone's desire to start developing a plan right now, but realizes that everyone is tired. Therefore, he said that he would ask the servants to prepare the rooms so that he could gather strength before morning. Lin could not contain his excitement that he would spend the night in the palace. Sven joked that in that case the man would serve him for the rest of his life. Rua was waiting for the start of the festival. She triumphed over the inevitable defeat of her former friend Ari. The high priest was worried that Rosen had not been in touch for a long time. The black rose disease has already ended, but he understands that the scientist is not ready to give away the finished product so easily until his conditions are met. The high priest remarked that Rosen was a very strange man. He was ready to endure everything, but after the last demands, nothing was heard about the scientist, and he disappeared from the base. The priest assumed that the scientist could have escaped, or even died. The high priest declared that until they find the black rose, it makes no sense. After all, knowing Rosen, he could hide her somewhere. The festival is near, so the high priest ordered his assistant to find either a scientist or a black rose. He did not allow that to spoil his plans. There are many worries in the royal palace, and meanwhile the temple is completely quiet. Rua assumed that the high priest had no idea of their plan, and probably no idea of the scientist's death. All that remains is to expose all their actions right at the festival. Rua hopes that everything will go well. Shiji came to report that unfortunately, they failed to find the black rose. Together with Lin, he is still trying to find it, but he is not sure that he will make it until tomorrow. However, they still have enough evidence for prosecution, and they will definitely find the disease. His Highness asked the assistant to hand over the suitcase to Rui before the opening of the festival. Sven prepared a dress especially for the girl. Shiji noted that the dress was made by the tailors from the shop that Rua had visited earlier with His Highness. Sven also asked to convey to Rui that she will shine in the dress like the goddess herself. The man handed over the girl's suitcase and finally wished her a good time at the festival. Rua stopped Shiji and asked about the cat. She was told that the assistant took care of him. The girl paid attention to how the cat was waiting for his master with amazing patience, showing boundless loyalty and calmness in waiting. The candidate added that the animal deserved its name for such behavior. Shiji asked the girl to choose a nickname for the cat. She chose Luit in honor of her late younger brother. He was a very affectionate boy. In this they are similar to a cat. Shiji thanked Rua for giving such a valuable name. Rua vows revenge for Luit for all of them. Diana has a premonition of the long-awaited festival. Sarid had to change the event plan according to Sven's instructions. It remains to check the placement of the knights and the procedure. Diana noted that first the tea break and then everything else, and after that she will help the groom with the preparation. Sarid refused to help because he assumes that the lady has not yet recovered. Diana showed the brooch and noted that with it was his amulet, which gives her strength. Sarid noted that she was always his talisman. At this time, Galt commanded the knights. There will be many important guests at the festival, so it is their duty to be responsible for everyone's safety. He said that everyone should be especially careful. Sarid personally issued a secret commission to Galt, and he will do everything in his power to thank Miss Rui Restato. Sven has prepared a trap, but he doesn't know what his opponent will do. The goddess herself is on his side, and therefore victory will be his. The opening ceremony of the festival has begun. As expected, all the guests are respected aristocrats. This holiday is held in honor of the founding of the country. It differs from a country's birthday in that it is a one-day ceremony. Guests from high-ranking families are present at the opening ceremony. When the 3 bells ring, the royal family and special guests will perform. The celebration will end with a shot from a salute cannon. This year, the Torbiaz family is not participating in the opening of the festival. Rua learned from Sarid that the high priest would speak after the opening ceremony. There is very little left. Rua accidentally called Sven by his first name, but quickly corrected herself. After all, they cannot show their special relationship in public because of the difference in status. Instead, Sven remarked that the girl should not express herself so formally. He added that the dress, which he personally selected, suited her very well, and that she overshadowed everyone with her charm. His Highness held out his hand to Rui and offered to lead her to the place. Even at the most important moment, he does not betray himself. She told Sven that she was relying on him. Diana was glad to see Rua after so long. She wanted to thank her friend for saving her, but Sarid argued that Diana was not completely cured. As a result, we managed to meet only from the opening itself. Rua noted that the most important thing is that Diana is better and there are no complications. The lady expressed her gratitude that the candidate is helping Peridot's family for the second time. Rua assured that there is no need to thank because friends always help each other. Diana added that the Marquis of Saint-Eloi was also immensely grateful, and they, like real nobles, will definitely thank her, of course in a friendly way. Sarid greeted the people and announced the opening of the ceremony. He noted that His Highness will not be there today, as he is at a meeting with the ambassador of a country that cannot be missed. In the hall, the guests whispered that ambassadors from the southern island country would be present at this meeting. Rua immediately remembered Yumia. The connection between the Torbiaz family and her was completely severed. And if today does not happen, these events will not reflect on Mrs. Yumia's reputation in any way. The pain that she had to go through, Ariana will answer for everything today. Lynn would never have thought that finding the hiding place would be much more difficult than finding the teacher himself. They searched all possible places, but still did not find the prototype of the Black Rose. It was a pity for Lynn that they did not have time to find him before the beginning of the festival. Suddenly, the cat on Shiji's shoulder caught his attention. The man said that the pet's name is Louis. He used to be a stray cat, and Shiji started feeding him. They met in the temple, and the man could not leave without him. Lin was happy because he also loves cats. Louis lives sometimes in the temple, sometimes in the castle. Shiji thinks he has a secret path that allows him to travel between the two buildings. Suddenly, Lin thought about the secret path. The teacher met with the priest in the tower where the monsters lived. To top it all off, he had to visit the temple from time to time to take the kov from Mistress Ariana. In order to maintain contact with the teacher, the high priest must have secret passages. With their help, Rosen could visit the temple and not be seen by anyone. Black Rose may be hidden somewhere there. However, it would not be profitable for a scientist to hide such a valuable study right in front of a priest. Lin suggested that he could create secret moves. Having walked them several times, Rosen could look closely at places where the priest would never have thought to check. If you want to hide something, hide it in a prominent place. Shiji finally realized that the prototype of the Black Rose had been with the high priest all this time. Lin assured that it was in the teacher's power. Then his hint became clear as day. Galt gathered some representatives of the knights, because very soon the opening ceremony would come to an end. They secretly left the palace to carry out His Highness Sarid's order. The commander asked if everyone was ready, as they were currently being sent to Torbias County. The bells rang, and the opening ceremony was a success. Then there will be a speech in front of the people, and everything will be decided there. The aristocrats discussed that His Highness Sarid performed the ceremony beautifully. They are sure that the king trusted his son for a reason. But they were worried that the Torbias family had not been invited. Lately, there have been a lot of bad rumors about them. It all started with the breaking off of the engagement of Lady Ariana and the Knight Commander. Many of the rumors turned out to be true. The high priest arrived. Most of the guests remarked that he looked incredible as always. One man said that he is the most important guest at all holidays. He is happy to see the followers of the goddess. The high priest triumphed because efforts to shut him up were futile. He was not allowed to speak at the festival, but he is sure that the people still glorify the church and him. After all, he should lead this country. As soon as the Black Rose becomes his, he will take everything that was rightfully his. There is very little left until this moment. Sarid thanked those present for the visit and began to read the words of His Highness. On this day, they honor the memory and history of their country. And in conclusion, he wishes that the people and the lands would wait for only the best days. All the guests shouted, "Long live the king, long live Prince Sarid, long live the kingdom of Zido." Sarid noted that usually after the words of His Highness, the head of the temple spoke. But today they decided to give the floor to a special guest. The entourage was surprised that the high priest would not speak today and wondered what kind of special guest he was. The Marquis of Sven and Rua came to the podium. Diana informed the Marquis that His Highness Sarid and the minister were currently discussing the details with his son, and she wondered if the man was really going to accuse the high priest. The Marquis of Sven and Rua has made a promise to His Highness Sven, and by this act he also intends to repay the debt to Madame Restato. After all, thanks to her, his son and Mrs. Diana herself were able to open their eyes. Diana had to experience something similar through the Marquis, therefore he sincerely apologized to the lady for this. Diana assured her husband that she knew about his innocence, although it is not proper for her to express herself like that. Mrs. Diana wished the Marquis to give everyone a warm welcome. The high priest was shocked that the son of the Marquis was able to come to his senses, and even more so that he was present at the ceremony. Rua heard from Sven that the Marquis's son was able to recover safely from his sleep. The girl is glad that her efforts paid off. The fire of determination can be seen in the eyes of father and son. She entrusts them with the beginning of this trial. The present head of the honorable family, the Marquis of Sven and Rua, with His Highness's permission, decided to confess the sin he had committed. But he is not the only one who must bear the punishment. Today, all the evil intentions and actions of High Priest Flix Ronhart will be revealed. A secret passage should be nearby. After all, judging by the information received, the scientist most often met Miss Ariana here. Suddenly, Shiji felt a creak in the floor. The man once again stepped on that place harder. He discovered a mechanism that allows you to move the statue, under which there are underground stairs. The Marquis is determined to tell the people what the High Priest has been doing for 10 years. The environment began to whisper among themselves. Someone said that a priest teamed up with a mad scientist and created a deadly disease. Someone believed that the church was responsible for the activity of monsters in their country only by rumor, and Lady Ariana and Viscount Redmond were involved in all this. The younger Mr. Santaloes stated that the father had not lied, and they had proof. The high priest took his life into his own hands and blackmailed his father, and forced to act under his leadership, but thanks to Prince Sven and Saint Candidate Rui Restato, Mr. Santaloes' life was saved. They shed light on the truth. Although the Marquis was blackmailed into committing crimes, he has no intention of making excuses. Today he is ready to be punished. Sarid asked the priest if he could say something in his defense. Sven did not just choose this day as a public trial. After all, the high priest draws his influence from believing people. Rua noted that this was just the beginning. However, someone from the people began to shout that the priest was not guilty of anything because he was always kind to everyone. The high priest realized that let the aristocrats side with Santalois, but as long as the common people were on his side, he could escape punishment. He noted that this is really a misunderstanding. The man said that he could not understand why they attacked him like that, because he had dedicated his whole life to the goddess and the people, and he could not commit such grave sins and betray their trust. Sarid noted that despite his rotten soul, the high priest is able to reach everyone's heart. Even after being cornered, he tries to convince people of his innocence. Other people also began to support the high priest, as if all the evidence was a mere fiction. Charlotte shouted from the hall that she believed everything Santalois said. The woman admitted that she had experienced brutal treatment from Viscount Redmond, and she was already thinking of killing herself, but Mrs. Rua saved her. Charlotte added that the Viscount and the high priest were in conspiracy and committed many crimes. She didn't want to believe it herself, but Madame Rua opened her eyes to the truth. A woman can only support the one who once saved her life. She is sure that the high priest committed many crimes and deceived everyone. Alan also supported Ryu. After all the evidence is indisputable, and it is enough to turn away from the truth just because no one believes that they have been betrayed. Alan assured people to wake up because they should be guided not by feelings but by facts to learn the whole truth. Another woman also confessed to being a victim of Viscount Redmond. But with the help of Rui and His Highness, she was able to open the shop of her dreams. Sven and the Snow White Maiden are on the side of ordinary citizens. The boy is also on Rui's side because she always helped him. But the yellow-haired lady refused to help him, and the one who supported a bad person is himself a bad person. Rua went all this way for revenge, but she was able to save many, and this warms her soul. Sarid remarked that if they had arrested the high priest at once, the people would have rioted. His influence was so great. Currently, the culprit is respected by all citizens. Sven assured his brother that in order to catch the high priest, it was necessary to show his true face. Sarid wondered how long they had worked together as brothers. Apparently that time had come again. His Highness Sarid ordered the high priest to be arrested on suspicion of many serious crimes. Flix Ronhart grabbed a bag from under his robes and threw it at his feet, after which he disappeared in a smoke curtain. The mad scientist recommended using it only in extreme cases when escaping. The high priest is sure that as soon as he reaches that room, he will be saved, and this is not the end. Members of his family served the temple for several generations. Flix's father, like him, was a high priest. He constantly reminded his young son that they were the servants of the goddess, and their sacred duty to serve for the benefit of their neighbors. But it is necessary to exercise caution in relations with the royal palace. The history of other countries taught Flix's father that the more power there is in the temple, the more oppressive the ruling family will be. They must work together for the sake of the people. After all, they are all united by faith in their goddess and the Holy Virgin. The father reminded his son that when his time came to take that place, he must follow the rules. Until his death, his father told Felix that the relationship between the palace and the temple should be equal. But he was always troubled by doubts about these sayings. If the people are on the side of the temple, why can't they rule the country? There was a time when the church had more power than the royal family, when the goddess Rush saved people from the plague. Felix Ronhart was convinced that in order to win this power, it was necessary to reproduce the events of those years. He will use every pawn for this purpose. The archpriest reached the door of the temporary room, which is now not in use. There is a secret passage leading directly to the temple. The first high priest participated in the design of this passage. Previously, it was used to transport the necessary equipment directly to the temple. However, everyone has now forgotten about the passage, except for the members of Felix Rothart's family. The high priest thought he could escape through that passage, but Sven and Rua quickly caught up with him. The prince was glad that Felix was too predictable and came running here. Rua added that they would not miss the high priest from now on. The man's face changed. He panicked because how could they know that he was heading this way? Sven admitted that he and Ruo had done a little investigating and found a secret passage. Having found it, he wondered where it leads. Sven was helped to answer this question by his subordinates and a wonderful cat sent by Shiji. He sent an assistant in league to search for the Black Rose. And it seems that they have found a secret passage that leads to the kingdom. There are many places in the palace where it could have been installed. In the case of the high priest, he would go to the temple. Sven and Rui could only wait to see how things would develop. When the high priest used the white powder, he managed to distract the common people, but not His Highness. The high priest always had a plan. He perfectly manipulated everyone around him. But now he is finally pressed against the wall, and no one will save him from justice. Sven and Rua, the very ones who will lead the high priest to the answer. Flix called the girl inferior. Rua just smiled because she stopped trying to help anyone. The girl assured that you would hardly call her a saint. She is a real villain. Sven ran his hand through her hair and added that although she was a saint, although she was a villain, she was still the most beautiful. Rua warned the high priest that she would return all the pain he had caused her. To the last, Flix insisted that he should rule this country. The girl came closer to the man and took him by the scruff of the neck, after which she resolutely declared that whoever he was, she would never forgive him.